Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. Today is a joyous occasion because Cam Riehl. Cam, when was the last time you were on the show? It's been a while.
Gotta be 8 months, Rich. Something like that.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
You look good. You look very professorial, and you
got the mullet going.
Oh, I didn't really look like a mullet.
It's long.
And so it's glad Cam considers himself more of an NBA guy than a college guy. So now that we're moving to the NBA side, hopefully we'll see Cam a lot more often. And of course, we're also joined by Joey Bardack. So, gentlemen, Cam, first of all, what have you been up to? How you been?
Roll down things at school. I'm a teacher, middle school teacher here in Denver. But I'm actually leaving teaching. I'm going to go back to school. Going back to school for product design. So still going to be here in Denver, but I'm going to be on the flip side of the education, system.
And you're also hoping to get into some coaching at the D2 level.
Yeah, if I can get into a GA-ship or at least get involved with Metro State, that would make me a very happy human being.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way most people start, is a graduate assistant and then go from there. So yeah, fingers crossed there. Joey, how you been? I guess semester's winding down at Ohio State.
Yeah, semester's over. I'm now back home for the summer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just looking forward to watching some hoops, talking some hoops, and then I start my job in about a month, coaching youth sports at a summer camp. So
all right.
Looking forward to that as well.
And you'll officially be doing your internship with us over this summer, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right. So your job at the summer camp will take low priority. Those kids are free to do whatever they want because you'll be busy working for Hoops Prospects. Lawsuits in the air. Speaking of lawsuits in the air, let's move on to the college notebook. And I tell you what, I've spent so much time on this. I am going crazy, trying to figure out why people are in the portal. Why somebody like Jameer Watkins, who's been in college ball for 5 years, played 4, is an early entry into the draft, or why Chaz Baker-Mazara, who's 25 years old, why he is an early entry into the draft. Usually reserved for 18 and 19-year-olds. So here's what I've determined. I've been given some misleading information along the way, it appears. And I've mainly been talking with schools, the NBA, and the NCAA. So I haven't got a final confirmation from the NCAA, but basically what I'm saying is what you originally told me doesn't seem to be holding up the way the schools are acting or the way the NBA is acting. So I'm waiting for them to confirm what it is. But what it seems to me here is basically when you're looking at a player, just throw out the COVID year. Just throw it out, doesn't count. Doesn't matter whether they redshirted, doesn't matter whether they played at JUCO. It just, according to the NCAA, it never happened, okay? Then you basically get 4 years. So if you played 1 year before COVID and then played 3 more after, you're done. There are a couple exceptions, like Jameer Watkins. He played a full year COVID year, then he redshirted, then he played 3 more years. So I was thinking he's got his 4 years in, but since one of them was the COVID year, he is actually due another year. So basically, if you redshirted in the non-COVID year and you haven't gotten 4 years in, subtracting that year out, you can do it. Also, if you went to JUCO in between now and the COVID year, you can play another year. The exceptions are people like Denver Jones with Auburn and Curtis Jones of Iowa State, because I'm like, they played JUCO, but they played JUCO the COVID year. And again, the COVID year didn't happen, so it doesn't count. So they have to go into the draft. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people unhappy about this, and that's why lawsuits led me into talking about this topic. But basically, yeah, now that I think I have it finally straight, now there are still people who are in the portal or have even transferred. They say we've transferred. And you look at the what's going on, and what you'll find is maybe they have a year where they played 15 games, or maybe they played 16 games or something like that. So the rule is for a medical redshirt, you have to play less than 30% of your team's games for the season. So that would put everybody around the 10, 11, 12 mark as a max. Well, these guys who have played like 13 or 14 or 15 games are saying, hey, I got hurt that year and I only played a couple more games. Can I get a medical red shirt? And those are the guys that are in portal. Now, there's a couple like Julian Reese. Julian Reese came in after COVID and he's played 4 full years. He has himself in the portal. What? So that I don't get, but most of them are challenging the system. And they're saying, can I get a medical waiver for this reason or that reason? St. Thomas is one I know is challenging. I actually spoke to him earlier this week, and he played 14 games his final year at Virginia Tech, shut it down. And so he's probably technically a little bit over, but he's hoping to get the medical waiver. So those are some examples. So moving on, you guys have any comments about this craziness?
The Julian Reese one definitely stuck out to me as a Maryland fan because I'd watched him play all 4 years. And I see him hit the portal, and I'm like, A, why are you leaving Maryland? And B, how are you allowed to play more college basketball? I had a question for you there, Rich, because you might know this. I'm a little bit less knowledgeable on, the eligibility subjects. Could it be like a grad year if he goes into grad school? Could he get a 5th year? No.
No, the grad year was always brought along. That was brought along for guys who actually accelerated through school, or they redshirted, and they were in school for 4 years, but they only played 3 years. Then they became a grad student, and then they were allowed to, go on. But there is no extra year for being a grad student. That's a common misconception.
Mm-hmm. And then my other thoughts are, we are just past the days of, when we had the COVID year and everyone getting every extra ability in college basketball and college football, people playing like 6-7 years. And I think we're finally starting to return to normalcy. But I think that this is just kind of like, it can't go from like 100 all the way back down to 0. I think they kind of need to ease back into the 4-year system.
Right.
In order to do that, they need to, we'll take away the COVID year. Here's a little bit of flexibility. And then I think, give it another year or two, it should be 4 years, much less exceptions, kind of back to the way it should be.
Right. This is basically kickback or pushback, if you will. And I know the kid from Charleston, the center from Charleston, is fighting it. Now, he's fighting it because if you play Division II, that counts. But he's trying to get a 5th year because he's saying one of his D2 years, his argument that his lawyer is making is, I didn't have the proper training, I didn't have the proper nutrition, I didn't have, so how's that any different than being at a JUCO? Why did the JUCO guys get it? I was basically in the same situation at a D2 school. The NCAA is going to say, hey, the argument the JUCO players are saying is the NCAA has no jurisdiction over junior colleges, and it doesn't. But the D2 people, it does. D2 people are part of the NCAA, so I don't see how he's going to win that lawsuit. All right. So top transfers to date. Now, we talked about a lot of these guys and what I did already, and they're kind of trickling in at this point. But what I wanted to do is kind of group these by team. And now these aren't nearly all the transfers. By the way, portal is now well over 2,500. So basically, these are guys who have transferred in, and they're maybe the top 60, top 75 guys. But what I did was I organized it by team, and there's a couple of teams that really stand out here. And I was hoping that Josh would join us because the one that really stands out to me right off the top is St. John's. I would say personally, right now I have not separated my draft board. So I still have guys that are in the draft and guys that aren't going in the draft on the same board. And right now, Ian Jackson is the highest rated prospect on my board that is not in the draft. And he's going to St. John's. Dylan Mitchell, who I think if was in the draft would probably be a late first round pick. And Yosan Sanin, he's probably not ready for the draft, but he might get drafted just because he's 18, 19 years old. But he certainly was a high 4-star recruit. So to me, St. John's is winning. But I noticed at Indiana, Josh's alma mater, or soon to be alma mater, they're grabbing a lot of mishmash people. You know, a lot of people like the most recent was Josh Harris, who had a fantastic freshman season for North Florida. But that's North Florida, and he certainly wasn't any Chad Lanier. But the good news is Chad Lanier went to Tennessee as a senior. Josh Harris is going to Indiana as a sophomore. But Joey, anybody else on this list stand out to you? Teams.
Right. I mean, you mentioned St. John's. I think it's crazy. I mean, how much talent they've got. They basically got an entire starting 5 to put around Zuby. I mean, you get great guards with Jackson and Sanin, Mitchell, like you said, and then I think Bryce Hopkins was a great get. I know we talked about them previously, but Louisville also completely regenerated their team in the transfer portal. Woolley, McNeely, Conwell, and Brown for outstanding gets. And then, Rich, the one other team I wanted to mention was NC State, because it's so hard, I think, to build up a roster as a coach coming, from a mid-major over to a big team. We saw Danny Sprinkle struggle a bit in Washington, and we were seeing DeVries struggle in Indiana just because there's only so much you can do. But he went out and he got Arsenault from Houston, who was solid. He got Holloman from Michigan State. And I've been seeing a lot of rumors suggesting that they're about to land PJ Haggerty. And, Haggerty, I think he declared for the draft, but even if he does, I don't think he'll go. And long story short, if Will Wade can grab those 3 guys, and he already got Quadir Copeland, I think that's such a great start to this new NC State regime.
Right. Cam, have you been keeping up on what's going on in Tennessee?
Yeah, Jacoby Gillespie is a really great pickup. A couple of other guys that didn't make the list as well, but yeah, I like what they did in the transfer portal. 2 other teams that really stood out to me. I like what Illinois did, picking up Ivisic and Stojakovic, the Itches coming to Illinois.
Yeah, I've been hearing people call them the Illinois Fighting Ilinoviches.
Ilinoviches, yeah. It's great. I love Stojakovic, though. I think, he started out his college career at Stanford. It was kind of up and down season, went to Cal, had a really good year on a not so great Cal team. And I think, being in a system that's a little bit more year to year effective as a team, it'll be fun to see him there. I also really liked what Michigan did, picking up Ademara as a transfer. He's been up and down boards, but really talented at the college level for sure. And Yaxel Landenborg is also, I've seen him up and down draft boards, around town, and he played really well this past season. So I like those 2 teams especially.
Yeah. Yaxel is in the draft as an early entry. He played junior college, so that's why he's getting the extra year. And I think he's, if the draft was today, he'd probably be a second rounder. Is that good enough for him? Is that what he wants? Or does he want to try to improve that with another year at a bigger school? We'll see. Yeah. UCLA bringing in Donovan Dent, and I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember who they else brought in, but I know UCLA has set itself up good. The only thing is, I really think they're going to miss Mara. I love Mara, the way he's developing, and I think he has the potential to be a first-round pick with a big year at Michigan. I mean, Vlad Golden, people are talking about him being drafted. So I think if Vlad Golden could be drafted at 24 years old this year, Mara, he'll be, 20, 21 next year? It certainly, could be, I just think he has the potential to be a first-round pick. By the way, NC State, Joey, also got Terrence Arsenault. Now
Right.
we haven't seen Arsenault. He was recovering from an Achilles injury this year, so he wasn't quite as spectacular as he had been his freshman season before the injury. But if he regains that freshman form, because he's definitely shot it better this year, he could be a star.
Right. And also just to have that veteran experience of, guys that have been on good college basketball teams before, I think that's what Holloman brings as well, is so huge because like so many teams are going young these days. So, to start out NC State with those veteran guys, I think it's huge. And then one more team I forgot to mention that I did want to bring up real quick was Creighton. We talked about them getting the Iowa duo of Owen Freeman and Josh Dix, great center and shooting guard respectively. And they also bring in Austin Sports from Miami and one of who I think is the most underrated transfer players, Blake Harper, the forward from
Yeah.
Howard, had a
Yes.
fantastic freshman year. I think averaged like 20 a game.
Big time.
And
Big time.
yeah, and like there's your big three right there if you're Creighton, getting them all back in the transfer after losing Isaacs, Neal, and Kalkbrenner. So I think that's huge for McDermott.
Hey. One last note on on who's transferred in. Chaz Baker-Mazara, who, as we said, was an early entry in the draft, is going to USC. And Eric Musselman, he has not changed one iota. He still goes around, and he did this last year. I criticized him last year in our preseason, Big Ten preseason. And I was like, what is this mess of players that he's brought in? Because it was all these so-so players seemingly were going to be so-so players. I mean, some of them were stars where they were, but you knew they weren't going to be stars in the Big Ten. And he's done the same thing this year. I mean, Chaz Baker-Mazara is probably the best player that he's brought in. And that's not good. For a team that's going to be playing in the Big Ten. Chaz Baker-Mazara is a role player. And yeah, and as far as the draft goes, I mean, 25 years old, forget it. Just forget it. They're not going to draft you. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see him transfer to USC. I figured he was finally going to transfer to LinkedIn.
What's that?
I figured he was he needs to enter the workforce.
Oh. So the top players remaining in the portal, most of them are in the draft. And including the aforementioned PJ Haggerty, and I can read this list off because it's small. Boogie Fland, who's an early entry, Darian Williams, Texas Tech, early entry, Haggerty, early entry, Jameer Watkins, also we talked about, early entry, RJ Lewis from St. John's, early entry, Baba Miller, going to his third school now. He was at Florida Atlantic. He is still not signed. He's not in the draft. Julian Reese, as far as I know, Julian Reese was at Portsmouth, by the way. So it's kind of weird to see your name in the portal and going to Portsmouth, which is the combine for seniors who are ending their careers. So I'm pretty sure Julian Reese is going to be in this draft and won't be transferring anywhere. Desmond Claude from USC, not in the draft, is in the portal. Here's another one, Dawson Garcia. Now, I know what he's doing. He played like 16 games at North Carolina and missed the rest of the season. So he's hoping to get a medical there. I think that was his second year at North Carolina, but he's hoping he might get it. He might get it. And Tyon Grant Foster, another 25-year-old, because he played JUCO, he too is in the portal and not in the draft. One thing I want to say, are you ready for this, guys? There are 3 guys that are coming in from Europe this year. Illinois has one of them, and I'd have to look up their names. It's not really important because none of them are like super, super high up on our board. But there are 3 guys who were born in the year of 2003, meaning they're 22 years old. Now, if you're playing internationally and you were born in 03, you're automatically in the draft. So I asked the NBA, I said, well, these 3 guys were born in 03, but they're also starting college next year. And the NBA's reply was, doesn't matter. They're in the draft. So we could have 3 players, theoretically, it won't happen, but theoretically, we could have 3 players that could get drafted and be enrolling in college. But here's the interesting thing is when they do leave college, whenever that is, there won't be in the draft because they'll already be in this year's draft. How wild is that? I never heard of it. All right. So the early entry list is finalized, and I have on here, I don't know, maybe the top 60, 75 guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, I would say most of these guys on this early entry list are going to be in the first round, are going to make up the first round of the NBA draft. We have starting with Cooper Flagg. And I would say, as I go down this list, I would say going all the way down to, I would say the list kind of gets iffy whether they're going to be first rounders around Drake Powell of North Carolina. Then we're looking, I think, at second rounder territory, probably. But you guys have any comments on this list? Anybody on here that surprises you? Makes you say, what are they thinking? Or you don't think they're going to stay because they're just testing the waters?
Yeah, I think there are a good amount of people here that I would be really surprised to see them stay in, to see them not come back to college. I mean, especially, I think you see it more and more the lower you go down the list.
Yeah, exactly.
I think guys, right, like Milos Uzan for Houston. I mean, maybe he'd get drafted into the second, or you could come back to a really good Houston team and be the #1 guy. I think that might be hard to turn down. I think Tahad Pettiford will be in a similar situation. I think he's going to hear a lot of like, you'll be mid to late second, or you could come back and be a lottery pick next year. Isaiah Evans, someone like him who's, really good player, but just hasn't played all that much. I would say come back to Duke, be a starter, have a really solid season, then be a first round next year. So I think I see that with a lot of these guys. But I mean, I would say no real surprises. I don't think there's really anyone on this list or anyone missing from this list that I would expect to see, or vice versa. I just think that, it's a big list right now, and I think a lot of these guys are going to come off once they start to get some feedback.
And as you look at this list, as you get to the bottom, say 20 or 25, most of those guys are in the portal. And some of them have already declared that they're transferring, such as, Sannon going to St. John. Cedric Coward just said he's going to Duke. Lendenberg, committing to Washington. So I think like guys like Boogie Fland, maybe Lendenborg, Thiero of Arkansas, Condon of Florida, Darian Williams, Haggerty, Jameer Watkins, Owe of Kentucky, RJ Lewis, Uzan, as you said. I think all those guys is probably coming back.
And especially, not to jump the gun, but as I look at the next list, of the automatic qualifiers. I mean, there are so many great college basketball players that could just flood the second round. So if you're one of these younger guys that maybe you'll get drafted in the second, do you really want to take the chance competing with, guys that were like the top college players, maybe not going to be good pros, but could still easily be second round picks, or just wait a year and then try again?
Right. Speaking of the automatic qualifiers, I'm trying to see how many I have on here, but it looks like a list of about maybe 40 or 50. And this is ranked from top to best. And you know what I'm going to say? I look at this list and I only think the top 5 on this list, and I'll read that off: Walter Clayton, Neek Clifford, Janiah Broome, Maxie Renault of Stanford, and Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think only those 5 guys have a chance to make the first round. I don't think anybody else on this list is first round material. Any comments here? Because these are pretty big names here on this list. These are very accomplished.
A couple of guys that I could debate there. I feel like Cam Jones could sneak his way into the first round. Chaz Lanier could sneak his way in the first round. Off chance that you could see a Grant Nelson in the first round. Late. But
Nelson.
That's me. You know me and Grant Nelson. I like Grant Nelson.
Well, Nelson, he was at the combine, the NBA combine, not last year, but the year before. He knocked it out. That was before he went to Alabama. But the problem with Nelson is, one game he looks like, I don't know, like Kevin Durant, and the next game he looks like name a terrible NBA player.
Zach Collins.
And I mean, I just don't get what it is with his consistency, and his shot is still very, very
Very
funky. And that's what I
inconsistent.
don't understand. When you're 25 years old, why haven't you worked that out? But then again, I look at Franz Wagner, whose shot has somehow regressed since college. How's that happened? He's got Franz Wagner has, I know we're jumping NBA here, but he's got a, what do they call it? The yips. Have you
He's
noticed that in his
developed an
shot?
awful hitch. It's horrible.
But he never had that. I don't remember that. I don't remember that in the Olympics.
No, his
Yeah.
shot's been rough, but he's gotten so good at getting to the basket though in his little mid range that all this doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, but he's got to be able to knock down those threes because they were kind of like they were kind of giving them to him. They were
Right.
like if you want to take that, go ahead. But anyway,
And
getting back to this list, there, as you said, Joey, I mean, you look at some of these guys, I mean, at the bottom of this list, look at some of the names: R.J. Davis, Vlad Golden, who I mentioned before, Wade Taylor, Mark Sears, and they're at the bottom. And in between are guys like Tunji and Max Shulga and Grant Nelson, who we just talked about, Ryan Nebhard, who averaged almost 10 assists per game. So, yeah, I think all these guys on this list have a chance to be second rounders, and that this list is way bigger than 30. And so you throw in those early entries who we have pegged for this, as second round, and that would range from like Pettiford, Jace Richardson, Rashard Fleming, and a bunch of European guys will fall in there who we'll talk about later on in the spring. But there's just too many guys, And somebody was saying, well, NIL is affecting the draft. There wasn't as many early entries this year. Well, you know why? Because there's double the seniors coming out this year. You got the guys who actually played 4 years over the last 4 years, and then you have these guys who got the COVID year. So you have more seniors than you would ever have. So that's why this draft class is still pretty stacked. Any final comments before we move on to who got invited to the combine?
Yeah, I just want to say I think like so much of the draft is so tough to predict. I think a lot of it too comes down to positional need, like just going back to the which of these guys could make the first round. Like if the Knicks have a late first rounder, I could totally see them taking Mark Sears just because they like their little lefty guards. Like they have Brunson and they took Campaign, Tanji maybe, or like Grant Nelson. If a team needs a tall forward. So much of it comes down to fit, but between these automatic qualifiers and these early entry people, it's such a talented draft. And I think we're going to see a lot of really talented players go undrafted just because of the sheer volume of people in it. And, I think we're going to see some of those early entrant peoples come back, and we're going to see, I think the G League's going to be great because there are going to be so many of these guys in there too. So it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I noticed last night when I was, because I'm still going through all the seniors and trying to figure out, do they have another year? Did they redshirt somewhere along the line, or did they go to JUCO somewhere along the line? One of the guys was Michael O'Connell, played in the Final Four, not this year, but the year before, starting point guard for North Carolina State. He's already playing in Europe. He's already signed up, or no, not in Europe. I'm sorry, Puerto Rico. The Puerto Rican League actually runs a different schedule than most basketball leagues, so it kind of starts like in the spring and runs into the summer, where most start in the fall and end in the spring. But yeah, he's already got like 15 games under his belt in the Puerto Rican League. So yeah, guys are already knowing this is stacked. This is not going to be easy to break in. So moving on to the guys at the combine, and for those who aren't draft aficionados, basically getting to the combine is huge. And it's huge because that basically means NBA people pick these people. It's not like 5 guys who sit in a room and say these are the 75 guys we want. No. They poll the 30 teams and they say, what guys do you want to see? And whoever gets the most votes goes to the NBA Combine. And then they go, and now this year they're doing it a little differently because usually they do the G League invite list first, but they're not. So the G League invite list has not Elite Camp, which is another combine, and the best of that combine move on to the NBA Combine. That list is not yet released. By the way, 4 dates. The G League Elite Camp will take place starting on the 9th, and it will run to the 11th. Then the best of that, maybe anywhere from, say, 4 to 8 guys, will be invited to the NBA Combine, which goes from the 11th to the 18th, both in Chicago, both in the same place. But what I want to say is if you were in this 75, you already know your chances of getting drafted are pretty good. And so there were a few guys on here that kind of made me scratch my head. And I was like, wow, I'm kind of surprised they got it, an invite. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Because basically, if you're up on the draft, the usual suspects got invited. But one that surprised me was Miles Byrd of San Diego State. Now, he made our all-defensive team for the show and the website. So he's certainly a gifted player. Eric Dixon got invited. Now, he was an All-American. He was a second-team All-American for us. But at the same time, Eric Dixon, the last time he tested at the Combine, basically, if you had Mark Eaton, if anyone remembers who that is, if Mark Eaton ran backwards, he could probably beat Eric Dixon in a race. Eric Dixon tested out horribly at the last time he was at the Combine 2 years ago. Now, I will say, when I saw him in person this year at the Big East Media Day, he looked much more fit. So maybe he's improved in that area. But I was a little surprised, but yeah, he's there. Trying to see Sion James. A lot of people like Sion James. I like Sion James, but I don't know if he's draftable, personally. Trying to think who else here.
Javon Small is a little bit surprising from West Virginia.
He really knocked it out. He really knocked it out this year as a player and really carried that team. The only thing I would say is
good.
He's so literally small. He's literally small. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, like he's small, but also like there's just so many other, like we said already, just the number of seniors that are already entered that they don't want to get another look at is interesting to me.
Right. I'd say Bryce Williams in Nebraska, even though I think he led the Big Ten in scoring, was a little surprising. I
think that was a pleasant surprise, though. I saw him at the OSU game when he dropped 43 on us in double overtime. So I was like, I don't know if this guy is going to be an NBA talent, but he's going to be fun. It'll be fun to watch him for sure. So that was one I was happy to see. And the two other names that surprised me are Elijah Martin from Florida and Micah Peavy from Georgetown. Both solid players, but I don't think NBA caliber.
If you noticed on that list of, the best automatic qualifiers, I had them at the very, very end. So to me, their chances of being a second round pick are slim. I'll tell you another one, Sears. Sears was at the Combine 2 years ago. And he may have been, actually, this might be his third straight year. But he's never tested out well. And we know he doesn't have the size. And we know he also had the worst numbers of his career this year. So a little surprised he got one. Also, Kobe Sanders of Nevada, who we'll talk about a little more in our next segment. I'd say Kobe Sanders was probably the biggest surprise to me. Now, and our last topic in the College Notebook is the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, which took place about 2 weeks ago. But this is the first time we've had a show since, so we're going to talk about who did well there. And Kobe Sanders was one of the participants. But in terms of athletic testing, now we keep a database going all the way back to 2016. So we put all these numbers in and we kind of come up with an overall number based on how they did in the different athletic testing categories. So who did well this year? Khalif Battle, and this is in order of how they did. Khalif Battle, Gonzaga, Gabe Madsen of Utah. That surprised me. Chase Hunter, Clemson, Davon Smith of St. John's. No surprise there. Jemai Meshack, Tennessee. Sean Padula, Ole Miss. T.Y. Johnson, Cal Davis. Curtis Jones of Iowa State. John Polikitis of Yale. I actually went on the show and said I didn't know if he was athletic enough to play in the NBA. Well, he was one of the best at Pitt. And then the best big man, and I'm talking about like 6'8", over 200 big man, and that was David Gasson, who is our guest today on the show, and he was tested out as the best athletic big man. The worst performers in athletic testing, and this list is basically features very few surprises because most of them are big men, except for maybe Patrick McCaffrey, who I would call kind of like a small stretch four at best. But Daniel Bacho, Nelly Jr. Joseph, Jonas Adu, Julian Reese, Omar Ballo. And then I also noted the worst guards. And these guys were amongst the centers in athleticism. And that was Terrence Edwards Jr. of Louisville and A.J. Hoggard. And that A.J. Hoggard is not a fluke. He tested at one of the combines, either the G League Elite Camp or the NBA Combine a year or two ago, and he did not do well there either. So this doesn't seem to be a fluke, which kind of surprises me because when you watch Hoggard, he seems to have a really good first step and has a knack for getting to the basket. But according to the athletic testing, he's not athletic. All right. So then the wingspan winners. I'm not going to read through the whole list, and most of them are big guys. Kind of probably talk more about the wings that did well. But Omar Ballo topped the list at 7'7" wingspan and a differential of almost 8 inches. He was followed by Jonas Adu at 7'5" wingspan, about a 7-inch differential, and Musa Cisse also 7.5 or 7'5.5" wingspan and a 6-inch differential. But among the wings and guards that really did well was Joe Bamasil. His wingspan's over 7 foot. I think he's 6'4". He had an 8.5 differential. 8.5. That's like Rudy Gobert territory. And Jameel Telefort of Butler, he had over a 7 foot wingspan with a 6-inch differential, and Matthew Cleveland of Miami, almost 7 feet wingspan with a 6-inch differential. Then the top performers in games, and this, we looked at multiple categories and who really did well in multiple categories, and actually most of these guys that I'm going to read off their names made the all-tournament team. So only a few did not that I put on this list. Curtis Jones, Iowa State. Janelle Davis Arkansas. Kobe Saunders, Nevada. Nelly Jr. Joseph, New Mexico, and he was the tournament MVP. R.J. Felton, East Carolina. Sean Padula, Ole Miss. Stephen Ashworth, Creighton. Tamar Bates, Missouri. Victor Lankinen, Clemson. Wooga Poplar, Villanova. Cam Carter, Kansas State. Zach Freemantle, Xavier. And Zeke Mayo, Kansas. Personally, I don't know how much you guys paid attention to this event, but I thought there were like 6 overall winners. Obviously, Kobe Saunders was a big winner, and I'll talk about what he did at this tournament. He averaged 16.5 a game, shot 54% from the floor, 50% from 3, but not on huge volume, and he also had 2 blocks per game. He basically is like a 6'8" point guard. Interestingly, at this event, he really didn't dish the ball out much. He's kind of older. He didn't test out great athletically. So again, I'm kind of surprised he got the NBA invite, but NBA Combine invite. But 2 guys I thought would get it. The next 2 guys was Sean Padula and Curtis Jones. I mean, they just, especially Sean Padula. Sean Padula did everything at this event. He tested out well athletically, and then check out these numbers that he had. Let me find him on the list. Where'd you go, Sean? There he is. Ready for these numbers? 17.7 points per game, 5.3 assists per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, 52% from the floor, 50% from 3, and an assist turnover ratio of 2.7. Guy just knocked it out. Tamar Bates. He produced a lot of big numbers, but didn't test out very well athletically. Victor Lakinen, again, didn't test that well athletically, but he put up big numbers. And I don't even have his 3-point shooting percentage here, but I think he made something like 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 shooting the three. And if you watched him shoot the three this year at Clemson, he definitely has a good feel for that. And I think he could do more of that. And then lastly, the last guy I have is Cam Carter, because he was one of the, not only did he do well, he tested out athletically pretty well, but he's also one of the youngest guys at this event. He's only 22, and a young 22 at that. So, guys, you have any comments before we move on to the NBA here?
I have a few. I think I think that a lot of these guys have outside chances of getting into the draft. I think, some of the top guys, could sneak in, but I think Sean Padula, in my opinion, has the best chance of getting in. I think he has like backup NBA point guard. Like I think he could be a TJ McConnell. Like I very much see that. He's so scrappy. He can shoot. He's a great defender, good passer. He could just come in, be a ball of energy, get some steals, get some assists. Curtis Jones also could be, very solid off the bench bucket getter. Can't really think of a good comp, but just, your typical wing that you put in the game, can put the ball in his hands, get up a few shots. But yeah, other than that, I'm looking at this list and I would be really, really surprised to see these guys sneak into the draft with as much talent as there is.
Right, right. I will say this, more so than maybe any other Portsmouth I can remember, this Portsmouth had a lot of big names, a lot of names you would know. A lot of years, you get guys from Bowling Green and guys from New Mexico State and da 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 da, and like these guys have had great years, but they're not really on your radar. This year, I had guys like Ballo and Julian Reese. I mean, come on, he's the type of guy I would think that would at least be going to the G League Elite camp, not Portsmouth. So yeah. All right. So actually, before we move on to the NBA, I want to bring on our special guest who just got back from Portsmouth, and that's David Gasson. He this past season with Kansas State, David averaged 13.3 points and 7.2 rebounds per game while shooting 64% from the field, which was the 5th best field goal percentage in the country. He also posted a career player efficiency rating of 23.1, which ranks 7th in the Big 12, and he became K-State's career leader in field goal percentage at 63.6%. At Pitt, not only did David was one of the best athletic performers in the athletic testing, but he also averaged 8 points and 7 boards per game while shooting 69% from the field. Welcome to the show, David. How are you doing today?
Sir, thank you for having me. I'm doing well. It's nice weather outside, so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's here too in the East. This is exciting, by the way. We've never had a Dutch player on the show. We've had multiple English players, multiple French players, multiple German players, multiple players from Belgium. Never a Dutchman. You're the first.
Making history.
What's that?
Making history already.
Again. So I have to ask, and you know what I'm going to ask because of my hat. Max Verstappen, 4-time F1 champion, one of my all-time favorite athletes of all time. Do you watch much F1? And how big is Max in the Netherlands?
I mean, Netherlands obviously is huge. I feel like all over the world he's pretty well known. I personally never really followed F1 like that, but like obviously he's a big name, like I said, so you see him, you hear him quite a lot.
Right, right. What is the most popular sport in the country? Football?
Yeah, I would say football, soccer, or whatever.
Right, right. So when you played with the national team, how much attention did you guys get when you were playing in the Olympic qualifiers for 2023?
A good amount, I would say. Not like crazy. Because because like I said, it's not the biggest sport, but I feel like it's definitely growing in the Netherlands. The sport is getting bigger and bigger. Some guys made it to the NBA and doing pretty well, so I feel like in the near future we should have a really good team, and people in the Netherlands should be excited about that for sure.
Right, right. And you guys did well. I mean, you beat Sweden, you beat Belgium, and then you lost to the eventual, regional champion. I don't know exactly what the terminology from it, but
Right,
only one team was going to come out of there. And
right.
how many teams were there? Like 16?
Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Croatia you lost to. So that's a tall task.
Right,
Europe, actually, United States and Canada have it kind of easy relatively to you guys because there's so many good teams in Europe.
right.
And even England, who really didn't give a damn about basketball recently, until recently, all of a sudden, they're going to probably be competitive pretty soon.
Right. Yeah, no, most definitely. It's a tough task trying to make it to Olympics from Europe. I mean,
Yeah.
there's still a good amount of teams that are really good that didn't make it, such as Greece or Slovenia, like with stars like Giannis and Luka. But um, yeah, hopefully we'll make it happen one day.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. So you played at Mount Zion in Baltimore.
Mhm.
So when did you move to this country, and did your family come with you, or because I know your brother
Um,
also played, I think, at Oklahoma State?
right. I moved in 2017. That was my first year in the United States. I started off in Kansas actually. Um, And then after the first 6 months, I changed schools and I finished that year in Dallas, Texas. And then my second year in the United States, that's when I made the step to Mount Zion. I finished school there until I went to Virginia Tech.
Right, right. Um, I assume that the Virginia Tech, was pretty close to Baltimore. I suppose they got to see you a fair amount.
Yeah, it's about 4 hours, I think. So yeah, they see me play. I was able to go back a few times to visit them. I actually went to visit them right after Portsmouth because I was about 3 hours away. So got to see all of my old coaches and the old gym. So it's good to be back.
Yeah. Did your parents come with you, or?
No, my family is still all back home.
Okay.
Like you said, when I first came to the United States, my brother was still in the United States, playing at Oklahoma State, and then he later finished at ETSU,
Right,
or going playing professionally over in Spain.
right, right. Um, so when were you last home?
Um, this summer, I would say, was it July maybe? August.
Okay, so it hasn't been like one of those things like you haven't been home in 5 years.
Nah, 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 nah.
What
I
do you
get
what,
the,
what do you miss most about home?
I would
Besides
say,
your family, obviously.
nah, that's how I was about to say. I would say my family
But
and
is there anything particular about the country that we don't have here that's there?
um, I mean, I would say the food.
Yeah?
My parents cook really well. I love their food. There's a bunch of nice things, snacks that I love, but um, yeah, I would say the food probably.
Okay. Amsterdam I haven't been to Amsterdam probably since before you were born.
Right.
But is it still have that reputation of kind of being a crazy place?
Yes, most definitely. Crazy place, but beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very, very busy. A bunch of tourists come down there, but it's amazing to experience. I feel like as someone that's never been there before, it's just a great vibe. I feel like.
yeah, yeah. I very much enjoyed myself and saw some things that were interesting. And we'll leave it at that. You were close to your town, your hometown. Is it Delir
Yes,
or Data?
sir.
Did I say it right?
Leah, yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's close to Rotterdam, but not too far from Amsterdam as well, right? And
Right.
kind of
Yes.
is it like a seaside town or?
Yeah. I guess the closest beach to me is probably like 10, 15
Oh,
minutes.
nice,
So it's not too far.
nice.
And like you said, Rotterdam, Amsterdam's all about 30, 40 minutes. So My town personally is like a smaller city. It's not too big, but it's all the bigger cities are pretty easily reachable, so that's nice.
Yeah. Do you speak German and Dutch, I assume?
Dutch. I speak Dutch, yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. All right, so we'll move on to basketball. I just wanted to, since we never had a Dutch person on, I wanted to talk a little bit about your home country. You transferred from Virginia Tech to K-State before it was fashionable for everybody to transfer,
All right.
and so you played a total of 5 years, three in Manhattan. Your first season with the Wildcats was the Elite Eight team. And that was actually the third consecutive year you made the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Um, so, uh, how would given all your experiences, how would what are some of your most memorable moments from your college career?
I mean, definitely the year you just mentioned, going to the Elite Eight, um, going in March Madness, making a run, getting to play in Madison Square Garden over there, going to overtime against Michigan State and being able to pull that off. Just a great year full of great memories. Um, my sophomore year, winning the ACC championship, beating North Carolina and Duke in the championship game. That was also really memorable. Um, I mean, I feel like every year has been good in a different way, but the winning parts are definitely the best
Right.
ones. Yeah.
I've actually, I started thinking about it, and I've actually interviewed a lot of guys that you've played with, including Coleman Hawkins this year,
Mhm.
Marquise Noel, Keontae Johnson, Justin Mutz
Oh yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
that team that won the ACC tournament. Art, and then the guys you played with at Pitt, some of them like Great Ozabor, RJ Felton.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of commonality there.
Yeah.
This season was the best of your career, pretty much across the board. I mean, all your numbers went up, and your
Mhm.
minutes didn't go up. It was only incremental. I think you averaged
Mhm.
like last season around 27, 28. This year it was around 29, 30. So it's very similar, but your numbers really went up. So what do you think was the difference this year?
Um, I mean, I would just say the work that I put in over the years, I feel like added up. I mean, that helped with my confidence and ultimately playing better and better. Um, and then just building throughout the season. Starting off in non-conference, I feel like I did decent. And then just trying to build on top of that in conference play, because obviously going in the Big 12, it's a whole different ball game. It's a championship level game every night. Um, so yeah.
And you had some of your best games against some of the best teams in the conference. Kansas, I believe you put up at least 20. Baylor, at least 20. There's somebody else Cincinnati, you had a huge game.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, it was good on you. Um, so, the team, I think in our preseason forecast, I think we had you guys in the top 25. I think you were at number 23.
Mhm.
Didn't didn't happen. So what do you think went wrong there?
Um, I feel like it's a combination of things, but I feel like the biggest thing that we're missing is just consistency. Um, in practice and both in games. Yeah, I would say consistency probably. Not really knowing who's gonna show up what day. And like, in some cases it could be good because anybody could go off at any given night. And that's hard to scout, so that's a good thing, but it's hard when you don't have the whole group together.
Right, right. You were definitely probably the one thing that every night, people could count on for, to get you 7, 8 rebounds, get, 10, 15 points a night. I think you were the most consistent.
Hmm.
One thing I have to ask is I know Coleman a little, not like you do, but I know him a little. And I would say, he's expressive, he's a little emotional. and the media and the fans really seem to get on him this year. Do you think that the pressure of all the talk about how much NIL he was getting, do you think that that wore on him?
Um, I think he talked about that a little bit after the season in an interview. I think I seen that he said that it did get to him, that he wished that he, could go back and play without thinking about it. But like you said, I mean, the media is obviously a big part nowadays, but I feel like the picture they got of him is like totally wrong. Like, he's a really humble guy and he works really hard. So seeing all that stuff online, me as a teammate, you don't like that for anybody really.
Right, right.
But especially for somebody with a good character and that just wants to win, I feel like it was unfair towards him. But, obviously that's a part of the game nowadays and that comes with it.
Yeah. I heard, there was one particular game, and I don't remember where you guys were, but you were on the road, and the fans were just riding him. I felt so bad. And I get it, that you're making money now, but at the same time, I don't know, you're still young men. You're my son's age, so I still consider
Right.
you guys kids.
Yeah.
And it's rough, it's rough. And then you throw in the gambling aspect. Have
Right.
you I know a lot of players have gotten harassed
Yeah.
by gamblers. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I've gotten quite a few
Oh geez.
bad and negative DMs and tweets. I mean, all of it comes along with it. I see it. I don't try to pay too much mind to it because, yeah, like I said, it's a part of it nowadays. I feel like coach talks about it to, try and not go on social media too much after bad games or such things. But I mean, it's just kind of hard not to miss it. Like,
Right, right. Yeah. It's an aspect of the game we're gonna have to look into.
right,
Because you guys are too young to be taking a lot of crap from people. So anyway.
oh, yeah, just to that part, like, just all the amount of negative messages you read online. Like after a good game, I also go online and read all of the praise. So, I guess it's kind of
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that anyone is above criticism, but
Right.
I've heard some really nasty stuff has been said. I mean,
Yeah,
stuff
no.
that you wouldn't say to anybody, and they certainly wouldn't say it to your face.
Right. No, most definitely. Most definitely not.
But yeah. All right, we'll move on. So as I said, you had the best, year of your career, and then you earned the invite to Pitt, which was, if you think about it, that was a pretty big accomplishment this year because the fourth and fifth year guys are both getting grouped together this year for the first time ever. So it's almost like you have a double size senior class. How was that experience? What did you learn? And were you able to get any feedback from people associated with pro teams?
It was a great experience. I really enjoyed it a lot. Had a fun group of guys. I feel like we gelled and bonded really quick. So it's definitely a fun group to play with. Um, I did get to talk to some NBA teams, which was pretty cool for me. Like for the first couple ones, I was pretty nervous because, it was the first time. But yeah, after doing that, it was a really cool experience. Nothing too crazy. They just ask you a bunch of questions. And yeah, definitely got some feedback. Most common feedback I would say is shooting. Obviously, at my height, I feel like they said I do a lot of things well and I move my feet well and I can guard and rebound. I feel like being able to space the floor was the most common thing for me that was said.
Okay. And, I've watched you shoot. Not something, this happens a lot in college. Guys your size kind of get pigeonholed to playing near the basket.
Right.
And maybe not so much because, sometimes I would see Coleman on the inside and you on the outside and vice versa. So
Mhm.
you did have some flexibility there. But
Right.
but still, I watched a lot of your shots, and the form doesn't look bad. And in
Right.
fact, you probably the most memorable shot you made this year was against Kansas at home.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one just before halftime?
I definitely remember that one. Yeah.
And what do you think? What do you think? Do you think you have to? Because that shot, you had no time to think about it. You just caught it and shot it. And
Right.
I just wonder, maybe are you thinking a little too much, or
Yeah, that could be it. Like you said, that's why I think I'm at my best when I'm just playing without thinking about it, and I'm really like, in that groove. But I think it's a little bit of both, playing the five, being around the basket, rim running and pick and roll. Obviously, like you said, I did have the flexibility to, pick and five or, straying out to that corner, but um I'm not sure because when I was playing 3-4 with my national team, like there would be games where I'm shooting 4 or 5 threes, and I wasn't like a knockdown shooter, but I definitely had to be respected, and they had to close out because I was shooting like mid 30s. So I wouldn't be disrespected where they just leave me out there.
right?
So I definitely think I have the capability, and I'm able to develop that into the next level, to where I'm a reliable shooter as well. I just feel like it's a matter of getting reps and getting used to playing on the wing again. Because I don't think I'll be playing the five position at the next level.
No, I wouldn't suspect that. Um, you know, one thing I've always thought is the one thing you actually see players improve throughout their career, from their early 20s to their mid 20s and even into their late 20s is shooting. It seems to be
Right.
the one thing that's really you can't make yourself taller, you probably can't make yourself jump that much higher or run that much faster, but you can improve your shooting. I mean, Al Horford, I think like the first 5, 6 years of his pro career, I don't know if he took a three,
All right.
and now he's a great shooter. So he's just one example of many.
Mhm.
Um, so you measured at 6'9", 7'1" in wingspan, 210 pounds. And if you look at the overall, all the four athletic tests, I would say you were the most athletic big. Were you pleased with those results?
Most definitely. I feel like a couple ones I even at the best time, like even at the guards. Yeah, it was decent. It was good to see. I still feel like some of I could have done better for sure, but it was a good to see and kind of measure see where I'm at against other guys that are in the same group.
Right. We keep a database that goes back to about 2016. So there's like over 1,600 guys in that
Hmm.
database. And you were above the 50th percentile in the shuttle, above the 50th percentile for vertical, and you were near the 90th percentile for the lane drill. And for those who don't know, that basically measures change of direction, moving laterally, moving backwards. So that's quite an accomplishment for somebody who's 6'9", 210.
Most definitely.
Between now and the draft, I mean, you mentioned shooting. Is there any other specific aspect of your game that you think you'll be working on over the next couple of months?
Yes, my ball handling. Like I said, I'll be out on the wing more, just being able to really take care of the ball. I love to play in transition, so yeah, just keep working on that and my body. Um, Feel like I can still gain a little bit more weight, get a little stronger.
Hmm.
So those are probably the main focuses for me this off season.
Right, right. Um, when you were at Portsmouth, did they happen to say when the G League Elite Camp invites are gonna go out?
They didn't say when, but I know it's coming up, so
Yeah,
I'm still hoping to get one, but I'm not sure what's gonna happen or until when I have to wait.
okay.
So I'm hoping to get one and then, kind of go from there, but yeah, I'm not sure yet.
Right, right. Do you know if they're having a combine in Europe? Because sometimes they do, and some of the international players who played in this country end up going over to Europe and go into that combine. At least in the
Really?
past, they have. Have you heard
Nah,
about that?
not heard anything about that.
I forget what it's called. Might want to ask your agent. It's like the Nike.
The Hoop
Nike.
Summit?
No. It was definitely for college guys going into the NBA. But anyway, you might want to just ask him about it. I know.
Right.
I know there was a couple years they didn't have it. So I don't know if they resumed doing it or not. So I got two more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. In the Netherlands, the B Next League is, it's a new league relatively, but it's starting to gain some traction, starting to get some better players. And right now you could go into that league and be a star. We know that. And there are bigger and better leagues where you definitely could play as well. So given the choice between playing in Europe in the G League next season, what would be some of your deciding factors? Because you would be closer to family.
Right. Just being able to chase that dream to the NBA. I've kind of considered both because I heard from agents overseas that I can, like you said, very well play in the first league as a rookie, which is not something you hear often, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just kind of weighing my options because NBA has always been my dream. And now being right there, just going back to Europe, I feel like I'm kind of holding myself back. I'll probably rather try it out, play in the G League, see if I get bumped up, really go for that dream. And then if I feel like it's not gonna happen or I'm kind of stuck in the G League, then I'll probably consider making a step back overseas and, like you said, be closer to family and still play basketball at a really high level for a good contract.
Right. And I think that's a prevailing thought. I think most kids, college kids say, I want to be in the G League, not so much because I want to be in the G League, but because it's associated with the NBA and there's a
Right.
chance to get called up and there's a chance to have them come see you easily. It's easy for them to see you play and so forth and so on.
Right.
So that all makes sense. So lastly, hopefully this is like 15 years down the road, maybe 20 years down the road. When your basketball career is over, what would you like to be doing?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure still. Hopefully by then I'll have a wife and kids. I definitely want to get a dog by then as well.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, no, I love dogs, but now it's kind of a lot. I feel like all the traveling and stuff, but get a wife, family, and kids, travel the world. Just be there, see my kids grow up. I don't have a specific plan yet, but hopefully I'll have made plenty of money playing basketball, so I can just not worry about.
You can raise dogs.
Yeah, right.
I've been a dog owner ever since I lived on my own. And I agree. There's nothing better than having a dog. So David, it was a pleasure. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope we can talk again when you're playing pro ball. And I wish you the best as you enter the next phase of your career.
Sure, most definitely appreciate you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. And if you make it to Chicago for the G League
Mhm.
Elite Camp, I haven't made up my mind, but I might be out in Chicago as well. So if I
All right,
am, I'll definitely look you up.
all right, perfect.
All
Then
right, David.
see you
Thank,
there, man.
thanks so much, buddy.
All right, appreciate it. You have a good one.
All righty. So now we'll move on to Cam's World. That's what we should call it. Instead of the NBA notebook, we should call it Cam's World.
You get like a little Wayne's World intro.
Yeah.
Cam's World, Cam's
Cam's
World.
Cam's World. All right. So we're going to start off with the NBA awards. And of course, they kind of take a lot of the drama out by telling you who the top three are. Cam, I'll start with you. Is there anybody on this list? And I'll guess I'll read them off, and then you can comment on them. You guys can comment on them. Defensive Player of the Year so far. this is who's been announced so far. We still don't have Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, and Player of the Year, or MVP. But Defensive Player of the Year was Evan Mobley. Rookie of the Year was Stefan Castle. Most Improved was Dyson Daniels, who probably also could have been Defensive Player of the Year. Sixth Man of the Year was Peyton Pritchard. And Clutch Player of the Year, and I should put in parentheses, who gives a crap, Jalen Brunson. All right, so Cam, what do you think about these awards?
First off, we just need to delete the Clutch Player of the Year award.
Yes.
There's a bunch of others that happened this year I didn't even know existed, and I ignored them on the list.
There's the Social Justice Warrior
the
Award.
Hustle Player of the Year. It's just like, oh, let's just give this to Draymond every year. Like,
or Marcus Smart if he's healthy.
Yeah, if he's healthy. Yeah. Yeah, I skipped those. I didn't think they were relevant. I thought the Clutch Player of the Year going to Jalen Brunson was pretty cool because he did hit a huge shot to win that series.
Right, but the voting was done before then.
The timing was cool.
And Synergy has these statistics where they let you know like how many guys actually can make shots with like so many seconds left on the shot clock. All we have to do is just let Synergy pick it every year.
It's basically what they did with Brunson this year too. He doesn't have the most attempts actually. Like if you went by attempts, it would be Anthony Edwards. But of course his percentage wasn't as good, so that's kind of how it ended up going to Brunson. Rookie of the Year, I was really hoping that Riehl would kind of scoop the award at the end.
Yeah, almost everybody voted him second, and I probably would have voted for him as well.
Yeah, I thought, Castle had a great year, but I think too, I think with Rookie of the Year, you should get some bonus points for actually being a contributor on a pretty good team.
Yeah.
The end of the year for the Hawks didn't go well, losing to the Heat.
Right, but he helped keep that team afloat when they lost Johnson,
Right. I think that
he had some great games down the stretch, just some great games. I think actually he had that 30-point game. I think he took like 5 dribbles. It was all just playing in the system, playing the scheme, and it was cool. Go ahead, Joey, though.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I'm from Atlanta. I love Riehl. I think of all the rookies, he has the best chance to hit superstar status. I think the only knock for Riehl was just that it took him a little bit too long in the season to get going. He was a little inefficient at the start, wasn't really shooting the ball that well. I think if he'd played, like post All-Star break, if he'd played like that earlier on in the year, I think he gets the award. I think the reason it goes to Castle, well, for 2 reasons. I think first of all, it's just he'd been doing it longer. I mean, since November, he'd been putting up really solid numbers. And also, I think there's a case to be made that Riehl is scoring at a better clip, but Castle's passing, he's defending, he's playing the two-way game at a really great level. So I think Riehl totally had a great case, but I think it was Castle there. And even when Riehl, earlier in the year, when he was low, when he wasn't really in the top threes and the leaderboards, I was thinking he needs it's going to be a 2-way race between these two. Riehl should be up, but he definitely has a case. But I think that Castle's defense and consistency is why he got it.
And I think you and I, Cam, voted for Dalton Connect preseason, and he got off to a good start. But then,
if the trade actually went through, we might have won it, Rich.
That's what I was saying. Is I love Connect. I'm just put him in Charlotte, let him take 25 shots a game, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the Lakers getting Luka basically took all of his opportunity away.
Right.
I think you look first half of the season, and he's got an argument.
Right.
And, not on the defensive end, but offensively.
I have a new nickname, by the way, for JJ Redick, which we'll talk about later. But I'm going to call him Captain Hardass. And even if Luka was was bleeding out his mouth and ears, and had back spasms on top of that, he's still
playing the full game.
Exactly.
Every minute.
And
he's not even allowed to
Dalton
sit
Connect's over there
out.
on his phone, Snapchatting with Zion's former girlfriends. But anyway, so any other comments about these awards, Joey?
Defensive, I think Mobley got a little bailed out. I think it was I think it probably would have been Wemby if he didn't get hurt. I mean, he was averaging like 4 blocks a game, over 11 rebounds. He was having a ridiculous season, but then he got injured. I think it should have been Dyson Daniels, averaging 3 steals a game. I mean, he was putting up a defensive season that from a guard that we've never seen before. Mobley's a great player, and I think more importantly for this award, at least, he was on a good team. I think which really helped him was you could make the argument that his defense was contributing to winning while the Hawks were a little bit down in the dumps. But I would have liked to see Daniels win that. But also, I see the case because he did win Most Improved, and it does, the great as Daniels is, it feels a little wrong giving him both awards. So I don't know. I would have given defensive, maybe find someone else for Most Improved though.
Yeah. Any more thoughts from you, Cam, on these?
Last guy, like, how much would you trade for Peyton Pritchard this summer? Like, I'm just like, is he worth a first rounder?
I think he's worth, unless you're like,
rounders.
I think unless you're like
I
a
would
bottom
say
tier
maybe a
team,
late
I'd give up a
first
first.
rounder, maybe a
Yeah.
late first rounder, early second.
I mean, just think of like where he was valued coming out of Oregon, and
Well,
he just
didn't he
won
go?
6 man of
Didn't
the
he?
year.
Didn't he go late first round in the draft?
No, I think he was a second rounder for sure.
I'm not so
I
sure.
have to verify that, but man, I always liked him out of college. Like, I thought he was a really skilled scorer, good pacing for a point guard, but I never saw this out of him. I mean, he had some incredible games this year.
He was picked 26 first round.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
2020.
Late first. All right.
And what I said at that time is I really loved him as a college player. I can remember writing the scouting report still. And I said I really loved him as a college player, and I thought he could be an effective backup, but I thought the Celtics made a mistake by drafting him in the first round when I thought he was going to be nothing more than a good reserve.
Yeah.
And I still kind of stand by that. I think you can get more value at pick 26 than the 6th man of the year. But
I almost feel like he could be kind of like what Jalen Brunson was on the Mavs to the Knicks. Maybe not quite that level, but I mean, averaging 14 a game, playing behind Drew Holiday and Derek White. If you put him on, I can't really think. If you put him on the Kings or like a mid-level team and get him, let him get up some more shots, I think he could be 20 plus per game. Like, I mean, what he's doing, he's not playing like, he's not playing that much, like minutes wise. Like, I think he still has room in his game to improve.
Right,
when
but you
he's
were-
in, it's flame on. He's the Human Torch. That's
But-
his role right
but
now.
aren't you
But I think
gonna
he should
have-
do more.
aren't you going to have the Trae Young problem with him, just like you would have with Trae Young? Like, who does he guard?
Yeah, I mean, that's still an issue. But I think if you're a team like the Mavericks and you don't know how long you're going to be without Kyrie, might be worth spending the money to get him. All right, let's keep it moving though. I think that's it for awards.
All righty. So some sad news here, I think. Coach Greg Popovich has decided after 29 years of coaching the Spurs that he is going to retire basically, but he's supposedly going to be working in the front office. We don't know how healthy he is. He had that stroke, and I think he recently had a setback too, didn't he?
Yeah, he got hospitalized at a restaurant. I think he collapsed.
Yeah. So it's a shame. Gonna miss Pop unless he, is able to contribute a lot to the Spurs, but he basically, in my mind, to shape that organization. And I can remember talking to Max Schulga this season, the Virginia Commonwealth star point guard, and the Spurs had talked to him last year when he was involved with the Combines, and I said to him, well, that's a great organization to be hooked up with because they have a knack of looking past what everybody else is saying and having a plan and putting it all together, thinking outside the box, and they don't give a crap where you were rated in high school. They don't give a crap where you were rated by ESPN in the draft. They're going to do their thing, and they have an eye for talent. And he agreed. And I think that's what separated this organization, is their ability to find just the right players and put together a team. They always seem to have a team. Now they've been in a reboot for a while, and they've been dealing with a lot of youngsters, but they're working through these issues. It's not something you can wave a magic wand and do immediately. There is some plug and play experimentation. But before I let you guys comment, I just want to say, Pop has most career wins as a coach in the NBA at 1,422. He's a 5-time NBA champion and a 3-time coach of the year. So, Cam, what are your thoughts on Pop leaving the sport?
Yeah, I mean, so he's officially going to be the president of operations. So he's, not going to be gone for good. But I think, if I think in my head, if I think of like the kind of coach you want to be, if you're into the sport of basketball, any sport, you want to be like Greg Popovich. I think the thing that he will always be missed for in the sport is who he was and is as a human being. And I think like when you hear any former player talk about Pop, that's what they bring up. Like it's kind of just known that he is an excellent X's and O's guy, excellent scout, has a great eye for talent, but like the thing that players always harp on him is like just how incredible of a person he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that we're going to have a coach like that ever again in the NBA. Steve Kerr, I think, if he can continue to coach for a long time, could kind of fall into that category. But, I could have seen like Brad Stevens, but of course he already moved into the front office as well. I just think like the long history of winning and the way in which he did it, I'm never going to see anybody like him.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, maybe in college, some guys, but even then, Pop was always taking up causes for right and wrong, and he really didn't give a crap what people thought about his opinion. We're talking about social issues and player issues, safety issues, and just general issues about what was right and wrong. And so you could tell that he genuinely cared about doing the right thing, and he had enough power and safety and security to state his opinion and not have to worry about what would happen or care. If the Spurs would suddenly say, "Oh, we got to fire you. You can't keep on talking about this issue," he would have been like, "Okay, fire me. I don't care."
Yeah.
And so yeah, coaching. Yeah, he's just a rare bird, and you're right. There's not many like him. Joey?
Yeah, I mean, you guys mostly covered it. I mean, we really don't see coaches with this longevity in the NBA anymore. And I think that the NBA has kind of shifted away from the game he once dominated in. Now that it's all iso ball and threes, it's kind of less and less like the way that 2010s team would play. I think it was peak basketball, just perfect. You have defense and offense, always moving the ball, always making the extra pass. Like that was just team basketball. And we still see that a decent bit with teams like the Celtics. I think do a good job of it, and the Thunder as well. But I mean, the NBA as a whole isn't really as much like that.
Wait. Think about what you just said, though. You just said the two best teams in the NBA play like he does.
Yeah. I was going to
Right.
say the Warriors are really like
the Warriors
spiritual
too.
successor.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
right.
I mean, Kerr was a Pop assistant for a long time.
People now watch the European game to figure out what they should be doing because Pop brought the European game here, and then made it work, and now the European game is that's the if you doubt that it's the right way to play basketball, then how do countries that have like 1 million people in them? Now think about where I live. I live in New Jersey, and there's like 11 million people in this state. So there are countries in the Olympics that have like 1 million people in them or 2 million people in them, and they go up against our country and give us everything we want. How do they do that? By playing team basketball.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's kind of my point is there are so many more threes, it's less fundamentals, it's just less defense in general, which is those are things Pop really thrived in. You know, and the whole sport is going to miss him. I'm seeing so many great memories and quotes and moments, you know, throughout his tenure. And you know, it's a nice passing the torch moment. Mitch Johnson has been an assistant for a while, you know, getting the tap. I would have liked to see someone a little bit more. I think it would have been really cool if you got like Becky Hammond, just because I remember when she was the assistant for a while,
Yep.
and it was very notable because I think she was like the only or the first women assistant coach, and you know, he would always go to bat for her. So I think that would have been a really cool full circle moment if she got the job. I was also kind of expecting to see like a Michael Malone because it's not much of a passing of the torch, but I feel like he kind of fits the way Pop used to play, whereas Mitch Johnson was a little bit less known, but he was always going to promote someone from inside a system, which makes sense. So I don't know. It feels like a loss for the sport, but he was a tremendous coach, and I don't think we're going to see a coach ever like him again.
All right. So now, Milwaukee Bucks. Dame Lillard tears his Achilles in the playoffs. 34 years old. You know, I questioned at the time when he signed that huge contract a couple of years ago, you know, why do you sign someone in their 30s to such money? And most likely he is not going to be available for the Bucks next year, or if he is, maybe for the playoffs. You know, I mean, if they get there. So there's been a lot of talk about trading Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it is kind of funny. The Athletic had a column recently. I don't know if you saw this, Cam, but all the trade scenarios, and some of them involved like the Bucks getting like three or four former first round picks, plus additionally like 3 first rounders in the future. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Luka got traded for Anthony Davis in a first rounder.
Yeah, they offered Luke Giannis, and the Bucks GM hung up. You know?
So,
Oh my goodness.
so where do the Bucks go from here? I mean, a lot of people are saying the only thing they could do is trade out of the Kumbo, but I don't. Is it time to cut bait here?
Regardless of whether or not they keep Giannis, you know, if they can convince him to continue to carry on his loyalty to the franchise, I think their window for competing is over. You know, I mean, they would be lucky to get Dame back next year at all. And realistically, you know, at age 34 with an Achilles tear, with his recent injury history, I don't see him ever, you know, like you said, meeting the full value of that contract. Honestly, I don't ever see him playing at an all-star level again. I think he's kind of done. It'd be a miraculous comeback if he could. But I think too, like he was really good this year. Like under the radar, really good this year. He averaged almost 25 points a game, had seven, basically just a little bit over 7 assists, top 10 in both categories in the NBA. You know, they're going to be missing all of that production because he's not going to be able to be moved while he's on injury.
And right now, currently, his heir apparent is Ryan Rollins, who, he had some moments this year, but is he starting NBA point guard? I don't think so.
No. So, or Kevin Porter Jr., which.
Yeah, and Kevin Porter is basically playing out of position. He's more playing like the Anthony Edwards kind of point guard, where it's shoot first, pass later.
Yep. Yeah, I don't see how they improve this team. Like even their main pieces, like you're not getting a lot of return for Brook Lopez at what age 37? I think he's 37. No. It's crazy.
Bobby Portis is a free agent.
Yeah, free agent. Then you go down the list, and
Connaughton's done. You can stick a fork in him.
yep. Yeah, and then to have the season end the way it did too, with
Oh my God, they
the
become first round exit darlings.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, and on top of it, to have it end kind of ugly with some of
this is the way it's
Giannis's
been ending though
behavior
for
and
them, isn't
yeah,
it? Always
yeah,
somebody gets hurt. If it's Middleton or Giannis or and now Dame. I
yeah,
mean, it's been this third year in a row, right? And
yeah,
last year it was Giannis, the year before it was Middleton, and this year was Dame.
yeah.
But I don't know, even with Dame, I don't know if they beat Indiana. Personally, I
I
don't.
don't know if they
I
do
don't think
either.
so.
Yeah, it's a shame. When they won the championship, I thought they were going to be competing for it every year for a good stretch. And, I don't know if it's just the injuries or like the overall makeup of the team. Maybe that championship was a little bit fluky,
I think it was.
just
I
like the
think it was.
timing.
I think it
I
was.
think ultimately it was too. I think too, like that was the last, really good year they got out of Middleton.
Right.
Basically ever since that, he's been a shell of himself with ankle injuries. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully they can figure out a way to turn around, keep Giannis in town, because I think it's valuable to the league to have those guys that are, career players with one franchise.
I
And I think
agree.
he
It
had
is
the
very,
potential
it
to
is
do
very
that.
nice. It is very nice to think of Magic and the Lakers, Bird and the Celtics. You like that. Duncan and the Spurs.
Yeah.
There's something very comfortable about that. So Joey, what do you think about the Bucks trading out of the Kumbo?
It's such a tough spot for Milwaukee. I mean, you look at a player as generational as Giannis, and like you said, you like the idea of, a player being associated with the city. And we respect loyalty in the NBA because we see less and less of it in sports. But I think we also saw, like with Dame in Portland, that you can be loyal to a fault. And I think that, even though they only have one championship to show for it, Giannis has stayed in Milwaukee year after year because they've still been a contender. They've still been a top four team. Any given year, they could still make a run. But I think with each given year, they've gotten worse and worse. And if we look at that championship team, no more Drew Holiday, no more Chris Middleton, no more Jay Crowder, none of those crucial pieces. And then who do they have instead? They have Dame Lillard, who had a blood clot and now a torn ACL and never really fit that well with the Milwaukee system and with, playing alongside Giannis. They replaced Middleton with Kuzma, which did not work in the slightest. He is incredibly inefficient of a shooter. And Brook Lopez is a solid player, but he's getting older and older. So naturally he's getting worse and worse. And, they have some solid role players, like Gary Trent's been okay. He actually had a really good series.
Yeah.
AJ Green is solid. Like they have some pieces, but
you and Sammy, we're gonna put you in the AJ Green fan club.
I love AJ Green. He's a great player. I love looking at his stat lines because he will go many games where he does not attempt it to. He's like if Jack Kolke was a little bit better. But anyway, and I was looking at this because I was thinking about this when I was watching the series because now they've lost the Pacers twice in a row. And I was thinking, like, if I was the Bucks GM, what would I do? How do I salvage this? And I just don't think there's a way to salvage it with Giannis. I think as tragic as it is, I think the best course of action is blow up the team, get rid of Lopez, trade Giannis, get first rounders, and rebuild. What the player's good as Giannis, you don't want to do that. You want to try and keep him and make it work, but they had it worked, then they lost, and then they bring in Dame, then they tried to make it work. And then that made everything even worse. And I think that at a certain point, you got to cut your losses. And I think you gotta get rid of Giannis and get some first. And you don't want to wait too long to get nothing out of Giannis. And then you're stuck in purgatory. Trade him now while you can get first and you can set up your rebuild. Like we've seen it work. We look at the Rockets now. We look at the Pistons. Spurs, if you can get those first and you can hit on your draft picks, you could be all right in the long run.
I got 2 points that I want to make here. In my gut, as much as I know I said it would be nice to see him finish in Milwaukee, At the same time, if I can fleece a team, like has been done with Durant several times and others, I would do it. I would do it. If I can get, multiple picks and multiple good players. I mean, they were talking about like Donovan Clingan and I forget who, I think Green from Houston and like players that we know are going to be really good players, maybe all-stars in a few years. If I can do something like that, I'm jumping on it. And because I don't know what it is with these teams that it just never seems to work out when they're like, we got the missing piece, Dame, be it Dame, Kyrie, or Durant, or I mean, even LeBron, the Lakers only got one championship out of it. It's when these guys hit their 30s, man, they are just, accidents waiting to happen. And so the other thing is, I want to ask you guys, and Cam especially, Cam, tell me, what's the difference between Giannis, Ben Simmons, and Joker? Now, I'm asking. Now, let's take Ben Simmons with the Sixers when he was into basketball and he was playing every night, and so Ben Simmons at his peak. What's the difference between Ben Simmons at his peak, Giannis, and Joker?
First off, there's a billion differences between those two guys and Ben Simmons, but I don't have to get into that. But I think the thing that I think what you're trying to get at, Rich, I think the thing with Giannis is I think he's shown a little bit of an inability or unwillingness to adapt his game.
Right.
I think
that's definitely what I'm getting at. In this day and age, I don't even know if I double team him. You want 2 points? Take 2 points.
Yeah,
Here's the other thing about Giannis that never gets talked about is even in the playoffs, they rarely put him on the best offensive player.
Yeah, there's some reasons for that. Like his foot speed laterally is not the best. And he's not, you don't exactly want him to play center. I kind of understand that. I think just being able to take a little bit of the rebounding burden off of him is a big deal. I think ultimately as he gets older, though, I think he's going to have to transition to center, kind of like how Kevin Garnett did late in his career, where he was this athletic freak. And then, as he got a little bit older, he had to play a little bit more of that dirty work role.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing with the Bucks the past couple years that's driven me nuts is their unwillingness to play pick and roll with Dame and Giannis. I think that's what everybody envisioned them being an incredible tandem together would look like. And instead, what they really leaned into was the reverse, where Dame would set screens on ball for Giannis, which, I mean, obviously not what I would plan ideally. So I think like as he gets older, that's what we're going to have to see him do, is really be willing to adapt his game. He's gotten that mid-range shot down. Like he finally kind of has that, turn around over either shoulder, floater, that kind of like Embiid-ish mid-range game. He's got that, and the jump shot's getting a little bit better, but I think he really needs to invest a little bit more time and really cleaning that up.
You do see where I'm getting though with Ben Simmons at his peak and Giannis. That there's a lot of similarities there.
I think skills wise, I think so. But I think Ben Simmons was always a better on-ball defender. Like Giannis's best skills defensively are playing off ball, getting in passing lanes, weak side shot blocking. That's his vein. But I think it would be nice if he was willing to take that primary assignment and really, put the clamps on somebody.
But I'm saying, can you win with somebody who's, close to 7 feet tall, drives down the court and basically wants to get in the lane as soon as possible and just take it to the basket? And then often get fouled and they can't shoot fouls.
Yeah. I think yes. They've won with him. I think the question mark too is like what do you want around him? Because we've kind of gotten a look at the small point guard, scoring guard aspect, and it's not a perfect pairing. I think ultimately, like Giannis is going to be at his best as a teammate with kind of that Chris Middleton type guy. I think that's like the underrated thing of the Bucks slipping is that Middleton got hurt, and people forget just how good he was. He was their clutch scorer in that playoff run. So
And I think he also
maybe
ended
more
up
in the
a lot with the toughest defensive assignments too.
yeah, good amount. Yeah, I think realistically, the build for him would be on a team like, say, Houston, where you got a bunch of young, athletic dudes. They want to get out and run, shoot it a little bit, kind of spread the floor. I think I really like Sengun, but I think ultimately, like the trade would kind of have to be around him. I think Jalen Green's a little bit too risky.
Well, I think
If you're the
the
Bucks.
one trade was Green and Sengun went to Milwaukee.
Mm.
I think that was
Yeah, for contract. Yeah, I forget that Green's on his second deal now. Yeah, so to make contract work, that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's still risky for Houston. But I think if you can do that and accelerate in that way, might be worth thinking about because they have some guys that don't even play that I think would fit really well with Giannis.
Reed Shepard, Cam Whitmore, they don't even see the
just
light
the
of
list
day.
goes on, man.
Tari Eason doesn't start,
Yeah, I think to like talk about an Ime Udoka type player with Giannis, I think that's like a perfect pairing between superstar and coach. So I don't know. I think ultimately, I think they will have to trade him. I don't know if it's this summer, or if it's at the deadline. I think it's going to happen though. I think it's going to be a really crazy offseason for the trade market. Just not even just on Giannis alone, but there's so many guys out there. You go down the list of Embiid. If the Sixers can ever get rid of Paul George's contract, like I don't know, it's a laundry list of guys that are going to be available for some pretty big numbers.
I think too. I think you're right. If there's any way they can buy out Dame, or I think he might have 2 years left.
Yeah, at least,
and
maybe 3.
But if they could somehow get rid of that, because I think it's be super silly to think that he's ever going to be live up to what he's getting paid. It's just not going to happen. Joey, any final thoughts here before we move on to our series recaps?
I think you guys pretty much covered it. I think one thing is that I've kind of been like wrestling with is like if Giannis were to get traded, where would he go? And we were talking about the Rockets and like Cam mentioned like being a good Ime Udoka fit. What I just keep thinking about is I feel like it's so hard trading for a player of his caliber just because like especially with the team like the Rockets, like you already have your core, you already kind of have your philosophy. So you kind of like throw an extra ego, an extra superstar into the mix, and it kind of complicates things. And I'm thinking like if you're a team that's towards the bottom that's rebuilding, you're not going to trade a bunch of your assets for him. But then if you're a team that's winning, that has a good core, you're not going to want to give up your role players or, ruin your team mojo. I mean, and like that's kind of what happened with the Suns when they go in and bring in Durant and Beal. It was a little bit different because the Suns were kind of past that dynasty, or not really dynasty, just past that team.
The argument the Knicks did it this year with getting Towns.
They did, yeah.
Yeah. I think adding a superstar. I mean, I even like Luka at the Lakers. Like Luka is Luka, and they lose in 5 games because Jackson Hayes is your center. Like, my point is like bringing in a superstar is not always as crack. It's not always that great just because like the Bucks have been building around Giannis for so long, and I mean wherever he goes, it's gonna be I think it won't be instantaneous building around him, and like I don't think he'll fit seamlessly anywhere. I think it'll take time just because he's such a ball dominant player. And yeah, I think he's a fantastic player, obviously, but I'm not really sure what'll happen with him. I think the Bucks are just gonna be a mess. Dame is, I don't know. I think Giannis is going to leave, and Dame is going to kind of be in like a Jordan Poole situation with the Wizards, where it's just going to be like a bottom tier team where he's just playing hero ball out there. So yeah, I'm really curious, I guess, to see how this all unfolds.
Right, right. All right, so now we'll wrap up the notebook by talking about what's gone down in the playoffs so far. And I guess I'll start us off. We can each pick a series that we want to talk about. And of course, you can comment about anything, anything that anybody else says, of course. But I guess I felt that the Lakers Timberwolves series, I felt that was had a lot of, I don't know, drama, around it. And, we're wondering, LeBron injured his MCL in the final game. And then there's been talk about, is he going to retire? I've heard no, but Luka, we kind of saw some of what Dallas was saying, in that, he was never at a top physical peak here and had back spasm problems and he got sick and all that stuff. So, and then we had Redick, who, as I said, I want to call Captain Hardass, who basically did something that no coach has ever done ever in the history of the NBA playoffs, and that's play the same five guys in the second half of a game without sitting them down. And the reason I say that is because, we know that every guy who's in the NBA, even the two-way guys, are good basketball players, if not great basketball players. And, and I've always been of the opinion that a average player at 100% is better than a star player at 60%. Now, obviously, the average player, the more he plays, the more minutes he plays, the more his tank of gas is going to go down. So, but you really couldn't find 3 or 4 guys to get in that game for at least 5 minutes. And I know the Lakers bench is not a pretty thing, but Gabe Vincent, he was in the NBA Finals 2 years ago, playing big minutes, and he wasn't good enough to come in for 5 minutes the other night. Dalton Connect would have, if it wasn't for Zach Edey, would have been College Player of the Year last year. He wasn't good enough to come in for 5 minutes. So I thought, now the way the reporter asked the question, for those who don't know, basically the reporter said, before you decided not to play anybody, not bring in any reserves in the second half, did you consult with your assistants? That's not the way I would have worded that question. I would have basically said, don't you think wouldn't it have been better to bring in, guys like Gabe Vincent for a few minutes, even though they're not, the drop off might be a lot, but them playing with 100% energy is better than your guys playing at 50% energy at the end of the fourth quarter. So I really was I understood why Redick was annoyed by the question, but I also felt that some of his inexperience shone through in this series.
And yeah, I think also like going to the bench, it's not about putting in the best players. It's about providing a spark. It's about, doing something that'll like energize the offense. Like I think back to like the Nuggets in the 2023 finals, like Christian Brown wasn't a starting caliber player. He wasn't better than KCP yet, but we'd put him in the game and he'd come get a steal and a big dunk and one, and it would, it would jolt the crowd. And like that's what you need is when you're losing. I feel there's some quote I like that's like the definition of insanity is like trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
That's from Einstein, I believe.
There we go. Yeah, I think if you're losing, like to not go to your bench, to not try something new, to not bring in someone else that can provide a spark, that's just crazy to me.
The other night in Game 7 against the Clippers, the Nuggets are bringing DeAndre Jordan off the bench. He's 76 years old.
He had some good plays too.
He did it. I mean, God, in camp. I'm also a Nuggets fan. My family, we had a house. You're a Nuggets fan,
I
right?
listened. Yeah, I listened to the pod.
Okay.
Last couple weeks ago.
hmm
I was
So
like,
yeah,
Joey's harshing on my territory here, dude.
we got the Nuggets, we got the Hawks with the Cam Reddish shirt over here. But yeah, I mean, DeAndre Jordan, like, he's not great, but we've tried bringing in Zeke Naji, Kamagate, Thomas Bryant,
Saric.
Saric, every guy we bring in, DeAndre Jordan just outplays all of them somehow.
Yep.
And
Well, the
so
point of it is
stay there.
they don't
He's a
even
vet,
look
man.
for they don't look for
Yeah.
a spark from DeAndre Jordan. They just want him not to screw up for 5 minutes so Joker could come back with refreshed.
Right. And also I think it's kind of like a Haslam situation with Miami. He just provides great energy. Like I see a lot of like their social media clips and he's just always laughing. And like I think he's just there for his veteran leadership and just his vibes, I guess.
Right. Cam, so
Yeah.
any comments on that Laker Timberwolves series? Now I picked
my
the
hot take-
Timberwolves to win, so
I did too. Yeah, I wish I had been able to be on the show for preseason picks or pre postseason picks because I'm sitting pretty right now. My last game, like tonight's game with the Rockets and Warriors, will be my decider. But if they win, I'll have picked all first rounds correctly.
Me too.
So yeah, I'm sitting pretty. My FanDuel account is hopeful. But anyway, my hot take was that, you know what? Julius Randle just might have been the best player in that series. Not the best
He was
player
great.
overall, but that series.
Yeah, well, it's probably the best defense I've ever seen him play in his career.
Yeah, he was guarding LeBron. He was switching on. They tried to target him one game with Luka, and it was a disaster because he's strong enough and quick enough to stay in front of Luka, and there's not a lot of guys that have that combination. He averaged 22.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 4.4 assists.
And I think what really stuck out to me was I really felt like he was playing within the offense. I feel like
Yes.
a lot of times he plays iso ball and drives fans crazy, but I mean he was letting Anthony Edwards do his thing. He was hanging out in the corner and hitting shots when he needed. He was going to get his buckets when he needed. Like it really felt like good team basketball from him.
Yeah, this is what I saw out of that Towns trade that I liked for the Wolves is that like Anthony Edwards still has those stretches where he's kind of passive. He'll kind of just let the other four play out on offense. But Randall's kind of like the perfect piece for that because he wants to have the ball. He wants to be a primary scorer. But you ideally as a team don't want that to be your all the time.
Right.
So it's like, having Edwards where he has his passive moments and you have Randall to kind of take the load off of him from time to time. It's actually a really nice combination offensively because they also give you different looks because Randall is just such a strong dude on the interior and likes to go left too. I think people underrate that aspect of his game as a primary guy. But yeah, I thought he just played so well. And even the game that they lost to the Lakers, he was the best player that they had on the court. He was the only one that could really get anything going offensively. But also for the Lakers, it has to feel bad to go out to a Rudy Gobert performance like that.
That's what happens when you don't have a center.
And your game plan is to blitz the pick and roll ball handler every single time. Like people were saying like, oh, are they like just letting him score? Yes, that was the plan. That was what they decided to do. It was, just let Rudy get as many dunks as he can. But yeah, I thought that series, to me, I really feel like the Wolves are going to be in the conference finals again this year. I think they have a really strong path. I think regardless of if it's Golden State or the Rockets, they're just really clicking on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, and I'm really kicking myself. I had the Lakers in that series for two reasons. One, I just thought just the sheer scoring from LeBron, Luka, and Reeves would be enough. Two, I hate the Lakers, so I figured if I picked them, they would lose. So that part did work. But I was watching that series, and I was just watching. I was thinking like this might be the best front court in the playoffs, playing against the worst front court in the playoffs. Like to have Randall, Reed, and Gobert against Jackson Hayes, and Hachimura and whoever else was out there. I'm like, I was just kicking myself. I'm like, how did I not see this coming? It was so obvious in hindsight.
Right, right. So Joey, what series of, that's beside the one that's still going on tonight, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what series that's over, which is all but one, just stands out to you and had some interesting things that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, my bias wants me to talk about the Nuggets and make a case, but I'm not going to do that. I think the Thunder are probably going to handle that pretty comfortably. But what I do want to talk about is the Pacers Cavs series. I think that one could be really interesting. I think it'll be a close series. I think that'll be
Oh,
a
no,
seven-game
I'm talking
series.
about the series that have just wrapped up.
Oh, the ones that just wrapped up. Okay, my bad. I thought the Knicks Pistons series was fantastic.
It
To me,
was.
that felt like a 7-game series, even though it only went in 6.
Yep.
I feel like most games came down to the final shot. And yeah, I think the Pistons have a really bright future. I think if they can just keep their pieces, I mean, and this is what I like about this Pistons team is I always advocate for like the role players, the 3-and-D guys. I firmly believe that it's those guys, the Jay Crowders of the world, the Malik Beasleys that win you the championships and not the superstars. And to see a team with, Malik Beasley and Tobias Harris and Dennis Schroeder, like really give a team of all-stars, incredibly great NBA players a run for their money, I thought was great. So, I think if they can bring those guys back, especially I think Jaden Ivey coming back next year could be huge because
Or they trade Ivy.
they could trade Ivy.
They might want more shooting, because I think that's still, I don't think you can count on Beasley being your, I think they might want somebody, they keep Beasley, but also have somebody in the starting lineup who also can make threes at a 40% clip.
Well,
Yeah, I would say Ivy started to turn the corner on his shooting before he got hurt, but
yeah.
Well,
I think
I
too,
love
they
Jaden
were.
Ivey. I thought he was going to be, as good as John Morant. So, and
Yeah,
I'm still not getting off of that. Ask me 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm. But I think Cammy mentioned Ivy's shot's been getting better. I think, it might take a few years, might not be instantaneous, but if Asar Thompson can develop at least a semi-consistent shot, that could be really dangerous. You could move Ivy to the starting lineup, but keep Beasley at 6-man. Tobias Harris, I think like that. I was so happy to watch Tobias Harris in that series because like that's so what he's for. Is he's not going to be elite. He's just going to be okay. And then when the playoffs come, we're like, okay, we're a young team. We need a veteran that can get us buckets. And it was him. Like, Payne had a great series, but like, I felt like when I was watching more times than not, it was Tobias Harris that was like the guy. It felt like they were kind of running their offense through him a little bit. I think Duran has all-star potential.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say too. He's like 20, right?
Oh, he's
still
so
a
young.
baby.
Yeah, and he was
21 maybe.
He's already got such a great body.
Right.
I mean, he has he's built like some of my favorite centers, like Akeem. He's got that build to him.
Oh yeah, he's a monster on the boards, great in the paint, good touch, and block shots. What really wowed me though was his passing. He made some really nice passes, and we don't see a lot of great passing bigs these days. So like if he can get his passing up, and if he can knock down, I don't know about a 3, but if he can hit the mid range, like sky's the limit for him. They have just the Pistons. They have great team chemistry all around. They have they're kind of have their bad boy persona. So yeah, I think it was a great series just for their future. The Knicks,
and they didn't have Isaiah Stewart either.
Yeah, he was probably
hurt.
hurt from throwing punches.
God knows what would have happened.
Yeah. There would have been we would have had another Malice for Palace.
Yeah.
And the Knicks, like, they took care of business. But if you're a Knicks fan, watching that series going into Boston, you have to be
totally frightened.
Yeah,
Completely.
I mean, you're going to need a miracle from up above to defeat Boston in this series. So I think great look for the Pistons. Great series just in terms of competitiveness, but I think if you're a Pistons fan, hopes are up. If you're a Knicks fans, you are worried.
Yeah.
Cam, what series intrigued you?
I guess I'll do the honors on the Nuggets. Nuggets Clippers.
I saved it for you.
God, you're kind. So I was actually I finally successfully got my girlfriend into NBA hoops this year. And, we were watching the games together. We actually went to a Red Rock show last night and we decided to
Who was
sit
at Red Rocks last night?
Jason Isbell,
Okay, not familiar.
country artist. Anyway, we decided to hang out in my truck and watch the end of the game because, once you actually get into Red Rocks, you don't have the best service, and it was also a phone-free concert. So, we were drinking our adult beverages on the tailgate of the truck, watching us absolutely destroy the Clippers. And man, honestly, you couldn't write it up any better. It's not the way that I thought the series would end. I thought it was going to be, one of those games where this is kind of like the classic Game 7, but it's close, it's close, it's close. You hit one run in the fourth quarter, and the other team's up 10, and that's it. And I think this was kind of like this was definitely like a thump your chest a little bit kind of win. Like, I think this was just kind of the confirmation of like, hey, the Nuggets are still really good. And I think you can't count out a team that has playoff Jamal Murray that's healthy, and Nikola Jokic. You just can't do it. On the topic of not being able to write it up any better, James Harden completely disappeared from the game. Ended the game with 7 points. He only took like 8 shots. Still had a bunch of assists, but
He also had some really crappy turnovers, and like there was that block out when Westbrook got his own foul shot, and Harden's acting like it's a regular season. He's just acting like it's a regular season game, and Russell Westbrook just goes right by him.
Yeah, and I gotta say too, like, if you're a Russ fan, this series is just all the confirmation that you need that Russ is a good player. Like,
I've never needed any confirmation. I never understood all the bad vibes.
Rich, there's a podcast where we were talking about the Nuggets off season. I was like, it's got to be like, I think it was the year that he got bought out by the Jazz. I was like, why don't the Nuggets get him? Somewhere that is on tape. I need that because this is exactly what I saw with him on this team, is that it's literally just like energy booster, confidence booster. Honestly, still, in my opinion, a pretty underrated defender, at least on ball.
Yeah. Hell, he made some passing lane steals last night.
He won them. Yeah. He won them game 1 with that steal.
Oh yeah,
he really did. So I personally, like the Clippers were the best team in the league for the last 40 games of the year, really. So I have a little bit more confidence that the Nuggets could possibly beat the OKC Thunder. And I think that comes back to playoff experience. Continuing like a faith in your core in a way. Like, I think the three of Jokic, Murray, and Gordon is proven to work. But I think now Brown is also starting to come along.
Yeah, he played excellent that series, especially last night. I mean, he was involved with everything last night.
Yeah. Well, and really too, like OKC's had problems with the Nuggets for a while. Like Holmgren's a great defender, athletic, long, like he can bother Jokic in some ways, but he just doesn't have the weight to body him when he actually goes high post, low post. So I think we're going to see a lot of Hartenstein. They might even go to a 2 big lineup. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all.
Well, that's usually how they start the game. That's usually how they start the game.
Yeah, but I think it's more of like a side look for them. I wouldn't be shocked if they play that, like if that's one of their main lineups. Like we kind of lose a little bit of Dort to bring in Williams, Shea, wing, whatever wing of choice, Holmgren and Hartenstein on the court at the same time.
Right.
So I'm really curious to see how the series goes. I think it's going to be it's going to be a up and down battle for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it was a very validating win for the Nuggets because I feel like watching that game was like, this is how we know we can play. And like, this is, everyone was hitting their threes. Like, we were winning the 50-50 balls. Like, this is what we know we're capable of. And I thought that was really refreshing to see. Porter Jr. look good. He'd struggled because of his injury, but he was playing all right. I think a big X factor for that Nuggets Thunder series is going to be Aaron Gordon because either, if Holmgren's on Jokic, then that means Hartenstein's on Gordon, and Gordon has way more athleticism, can stretch the floor. I think he would just give Hartenstein nightmares. He'd be hitting threes, he'd be driving past him, he'd be dunking on him. I think that would be really hard to contend with. And then if they, and then they put Holmgren on Gordon, Jokic, I think, can beat Hartenstein one-on-one fairly easily.
Yep.
Like, I think Murray's going to struggle in that series, and probably Porter Jr. too, because their perimeter defense is so good. I think to win that series, it's going to come down to just Jokic and Gordon getting the buckets. Like, I think Gordon might need to average 20 a game. Jokic might need to average over 30. Like, Jokic is, I think in that series, it might be a little bit, we might need to see him play a little more hero ball. But, like Westbrook and Watson, like, they can come in off the bench and provide that spark they did, just be a ball of energy and get steals and get going, like we've seen them do. Christian Brown as well defensively. Like, I wouldn't write us out yet, but
Yeah,
it'll be a very interesting series for sure.
I would like to make one final comment before we leave the series and go on to our picks of the week, and that's on Russell Westbrook. My favorite player up until, probably my favorite player of all time is Allen Iverson. And he was at the end of his career when Russ was starting his. And I can remember the first time I saw Russ play I didn't see him play in college. He didn't play a lot in college. But the first time I saw him play as a pro, I was like, holy shit, that's Allen Iverson. And and I'll take anyone to task when you watch the other night, when you watch last night's game. His fiery attitude and his like fuck you attitude, when he got the technical for hanging on the rim. It's AI all over again.
Well, too, the people he was yelling at in the crowd, Ballmer paid for 125 some Wall fans to come to the Nuggets game and bought them all front, like lower deck tickets.
Right.
So that's who Russ was yelling at.
He
said, "Take your ass home."
I'll take Russ. I'll take Russ any day of the week, man. I love guys who play with fire, and he does. Folks, we stepped away for a second. We had the most interesting discussions, which I don't know why we didn't have on the show. But just to summarize, Cam, tell the listeners about your dilemma and what I suggested you do. You're going to think about.
Well, so, parlay betting, you get down to the stretch and, if you've done it before, you've gotten burned and, been sitting there with your cards in your hand and you watch them all burn down. And that's what happened to me last year.
You have an 8-team parlay right now. You picked all the first series. The first series teams.
All comes down to
tonight's Houston's Golden State game.
Yeah. So
and if you win, you win 300 and what?
I think it's 330.
330, and you bet 30?
Yeah, it was a plus 900
and
bet.
So what I suggested was that you take Golden State plus the 2.5 for $30, and then that way, if Golden State wins, you don't lose anything.
Yeah.
And if they lose by 2 or 1, or if they win or lose by 2 or 1, then you would break even at worst. But if they lose by 2 or 1, you would win both bets. So that's why I kind of like it, because there's a small window in there where you could win both bets. Now, your other option is cashing out at 160 something.
Yep, 160.
Right.
I think it's 165.
So my suggestion is take the 2.5 points for $30.
I like that. That's a professional opinion. Thanks, Doc.
I was gambling before you guys were born. Of course, it wasn't legal. It wasn't legal back then, but and then Joey has an interesting argument where you have your bet is on It was a preseason bet to win.
It
MVP.
was Jokic for MVP, and Castle for Rookie of the Year. I think I placed it like some. I think I placed it in like November or something. I'm not sure.
So what's
I think
the cash out? What's the cash out right now? Do you know?
no cash out.
You
It's
can't
just
on season awards.
Yeah, it's just 30 to win. I think 280. I'm not sure.
Oh, and you
exactly
can't cash it out now?
No.
Oh,
no.
That's a shame. That's a shame. And so you were asking, do we think you're going to win? And and basically both Cam and I said that we thought statistically it should go to Joker, but we didn't think it would. Basically, A, voter fatigue. Shea's never won it before, and B, the Shea's team was so dominant during the regular season, which is only the voting started before the playoffs, or the voting finished before the playoffs. And so I think he's got to be the heavy favorite to win it. So, all right. So now we're going to move on to our second round series picks. But we got one first round series still going on, and that's tonight, Game 7, Golden State +2.5 at Houston, -2.5, obviously. I threw this in because we rarely get the chance to make game predictions. But we're going to make it one on here for this Game 7. Cam, you got all kinds of things going on, but I mean, if you were just betting this game the way it is, you seem to be surprised that Golden State was getting points.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Rockets pretty heavily in this series. Honestly, too, like you can make an argument that really the Rockets could have swept. Like a lot of these games are really thin margins. And really, like, I think too, just the mentality check of like, yeah, they are a young team. They should have mopped the floor with the Warriors with their one game without Jimmy Butler, but that didn't happen. I just think, these past two games, they've really just chewed up the Warriors. And I think you're kind of finally seeing the size difference, kind of like what we talked about with, Lakers and Timberwolves, kind of a similar matchup playing out, is that, for the first couple games, you can kind of manage with an undersized squad, against these bigger lineups. But as you stretch it out, I think the athleticism of the Rockets is just kind of overwhelming. And also just Steven Adams is playing out of his head right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool to see him come back from injury and just, he didn't even really play much this season. They would play this double big lineup from time to time, and they were plus some ridiculous number in the regular season just because they're two big dudes, him and Şengün. But yeah, I just think, I think Jalen Green is always a threat to get uncorked. If he gets uncorked, it's a whole different game. Amin Thompson's looking more and more comfortable, especially with the ball in his hands. He's had some really nice slashing plays. Şengün has been their best player, throughout the series. Van Vliet's finally finding his shooting touch again. So I personally really like the Rockets tonight, but I just, I have the history of getting burned, and the reality is, I think, Steph in a Game 7, you always have to be looking for him to go for 30 plus. And same thing with Jimmy Butler. That's just a fact. But will they get enough of the supporting cast to really make it a game? We'll see.
One thing I've noticed in these series is it seems like the teams with the old guys on it seem to be petering out. The series looks one way the first couple of games, and then as the series goes along, these teams with the older guys seem to be running out of gas.
Yeah. I think it's a product of how these teams are built too. Like these teams are built for those guys to play big minutes. And that's fine regular season where the physicality is not there as much, but this playoffs, I love the way it's been officiated. Like sometimes it veers onto like the line of like, ooh, that should have been a call. Or, I can't believe they're letting them get away with this contact, this game. So it can be inconsistent, but when it's called this way, it gets really hard for these older guys to stick at the same level of play. I think that happened to Kawhi a little bit
And Harden
throughout that
probably too.
series. Well, that just always happens to James Harden, so we can't really blame age and physicality. I think that's just him. It's a him problem.
Right.
But yeah.
So what's your pick here with the points? And for how much?
God. You're killing me, Rich. Give me the Rockets. I don't even know. Come back to me.
All right, I'll just put Houston for a unknown amount at this point. Joey, what do you got?
Might be my entire life savings. I don't know.
It could only be 100, 10 to 100.
Give me 30. I'll take
All
30.
right, 30 on the Rockets. All right, what do you got, Joey?
I'm just gonna take Golden State for 10 here. I know this whole series, I had the Warriors winning just because I figured the pure star power from Butler and Curry combined, the Rockets' lack of experience would catch up. But I find myself when any given moment when I'm watching these games, I'm like, I have no idea who's going to win or what's going to happen. One team will win comfortably, and the next game the complete opposite will happen. I'm just like Cam said, Game 7 Steph. I just believe in him in a big setting like that. And pulling off a 3-1 upset is just so difficult. It's so tough. I mean, winning Game 5 and Game 6, when the Warriors know they can afford to lose them is one thing, but to ask the Rockets to win a third straight, while the Warriors know their backs against the wall with a coach's experience at Steve Kerr, players like Steph and Jimmy and Draymond, I think that's a huge ask. Also, I think dark horse in this game could be Kuminga. Kerr said he might finally let him play minutes.
That's a dark horse.
I'm gonna make a rule. If Kuminga doesn't score more than 9 points tonight, his name is never allowed to be spoken on the show ever again.
I will continue to speak. I will continue to be a Jonathan Kuminga believer until next year he's going to get traded and he's going to average 16 a game.
He's going to get traded for a 4th round pick.
It'll be a great trade for whoever trades for him, but I think he could be a sleeper because I think Kerr is starting to admit almost that he knows he needs to shake things up. And I think Kuminga minutes could be that. I mean, like we've seen Kuminga's averaged 16 a game in the games he's played. We've seen him be able to score at a high clip. I think he could be just what they need, but even if not, that's true. But I think regardless, I mean, we've seen Steph do this time and again. I think Steph is he's going to have one of those moments of like, okay, I need to put the team on my back. And I think he's just going to have an otherworldly performance. I think Draymond's going to continue to get away with some questionable screens and fouls and whatnot. And Cam, like you said in the while we were on break, like the NBA wants Golden State to win so badly. And I'm not accusing rigging or ref whatever, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if there were some things that go Golden State's way in this game.
Yeah, I think even just that Draymond hasn't gotten ejected in a game yet is showing some favoritism.
Well, apparently he figured out a new strategy. He realized that flagrants don't get counted as tech, so we'll see him use that. That new play.
Just hit the guy. Don't talk to him.
All right. So, I'm gonna actually. Cam also said off the air that. Oh, geez, I forgot what you said. He said in game, if the Warriors were going to pull the moment of Steph Curry coming to life and saving the day and all that good stuff, it was going to happen in Game 6, and it didn't. I see these teams going in 2 different directions. Houston's home. Spread's 2.5. Wish it was 2, but I'll give that extra half point. But I'm going to put 20 on Houston, and I'll tell you what. The minute Joey said he thought that the turning point might be Kuminga, I almost thought about tripling that amount. But I'm going to stick with 20. So, yeah. All right, so now we're going to move on to the first round series, and one starts today. That's Indiana and Cleveland, and Indiana is plus 370. The Cavs are minus 490. By the way, we're getting these odds as a mixture of, if you took the average of FanDuel and DraftKings, basically. So actually, the odds are much more favorable for Cleveland on DraftKings and much more favorable for Indiana on FanDuel. We have a big differential. The other series are very close, but there's a huge differential on this series. So, and by the way, if you're curious about today's line, it's 8.5. Cavs are 8.5-point favorite, and that's kind of funny because Darius, drawing a blank.
Garland.
Garland is iffy for this game. Missed the last two games of the previous series. But then again, Ben Mathurin is also iffy, as far as I know, because he missed the last two games of the Indiana-Milwaukee series. So they both have a little injury concerns. So, Cam, what are you thinking here?
First off, I think the lines are way too favorable for the Cavs. I think a huge portion of that is that they just came off of a historic beating of a pretty bad Heat team.
Yep.
I think it underrates the fact that the Pacers handled the Bucks in pretty much every game, and have also showed some really good clutch scoring. You know, a lot of those games, I mean, they pulled the most recent game out of their ass. I mean, they're down, I think 8 points with like 40 seconds left. 7? It was 7, excuse me. Right, those things just don't happen, but they've got a little bit of that, you know, Reggie Miller Pacer voodoo magic going on. Season series between the two teams, they played twice in January, twice in April. January, the Pacers beat them 108-93. The second game in January, which was a home and away, Cavs took it 127-117. April games, which are probably more relevant to us. Pacers took the first game in April on the 10th, 114-112. And then on the 13th, again, a home and away, Pacers again won the game 126-118 in an overtime game. You know, I think that just kind of continues to underline like this line is too favorable for the Cavs. Give me Indiana for 20.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you're saying. But I'll let Joey. Joey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you, Cam. I do think the Cavs are going to win the series, but I don't like the line. I think that, I don't think they're giving Indiana a fair shot. I think Indiana's good. I think this could be a 7-game series, maybe 6, but Indiana's going to give them a real run for their money. Feels like the Pacers are playing with a chip on their shoulder, coming in as the underdogs. They looked really good against the Bucks, who, you know, we talked about their struggles, but still a great team, still a lot of great players. And I think the Cavs, I think they're going to come in a little overconfident. Like you said, not a great Heat team they're playing against. And especially with no Garland, I think, you know, Halliburton could easily have a great, you know, could win that point guard matchup, have a really good game there. They can steal one in Cleveland and then take care of business at home. I've been really impressed by the home fan base. I've been paying very attention to like the crowds, you know, in terms of who's wearing the shirts, like where's the energy coming from. And I've really liked what I've seen from the Pacers. They've really done a good job at home. I think I'll take the Pacers for $10 here. Like I said, I do think the Cavs will win the series, but I really like the Pacers odds. I think they're a really good team. I would not be surprised at all if they shot Cleveland and took the series.
I too like Indiana. I think between this series, Boston, New York, and OKC, Denver, the 3 series that we do have the odds for, this is most likely the one for an upset. And I actually put just a few dollars before the playoffs started on Indiana to win it all because I was getting huge odds. So I don't think unlikely, but the odds made it very nice, and I'm only going to lose a couple dollars and profit nicely if it happens. So, I'm going to put 20 on Indiana. and I'll leave it at that. So how about the Celtics New York? And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind getting my opinion in here first, because I kind of, Joey mentioned this, and I'm the odds are huge. Celtics are minus 810, while the Knicks are plus 560. Before the playoffs started, if you told me these were the odds, I would have probably taken the Knicks. Not necessarily because I thought they were going to win the series, but based on the odds. I don't like betting $81 to win 10 on Boston. But I really was kind of disturbed that a wounded Detroit team that didn't even have its full capacity could take this New York team down to the wire every game. And it just seemed like too much work. And I know Drew Holiday might not be ready for the first game, but you know what? Brunson's playing on a bad ankle. This New York team just isn't clicking like I expected them to. They looked better last year. And so I'm going to put just 10 on the Celtics. So I'm putting up 81 to win 10, which I don't like. But I think of all the series we're going to talk about today, this is the one I feel most confident that the Celtics will win it. So, Cam, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I do think this is going to be closer than the margin suggests. I think the reason for that, I think Karl-Anthony Towns has finally learned how to play playoff basketball. He's had some really great moments in that Pistons series. Some bad moments, sure. A couple missed free throws that were really key, but I think this is just kind of the way that the Knicks play. They play for close games. They really they thrive on playing for those final scores of 98, 97. Like that's what they're built for. And with the Celtics, there's always the threat of injury. Right? Drew Holiday's coming in a little bit beat up, but I think the Celtics still just outclass pretty much everybody in the East. I'm putting 10 on the Celtics.
Gotcha. Joey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have 10 the Celtics here too. Like you said, Rich, I don't like putting up that much money just to win 10, but the Celtics, I think they're just, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think they're just the perfectly constructed roster. The Knicks, like you said, have not been playing the way we thought they would. They've had their struggles. The Celtics, I mean, the Magic played a very physical series, and the Celtics, they took the punches and they responded about as well as you could have hoped, winning that game in 5 or winning that series in 5. So yeah, Celtics, I think they're going to win the championship, or at least I know I'm very, very confident that they will make the finals at the very least. So Celtics for 10 here.
Right. All right. So now we move on to the OK series versus Denver, and the odds are very, very similar to the Boston New York series. OKC is minus 800. The Nuggets are plus 555. So we'll start with you, Joey, in the West here. What are you thinking?
Well, like you said, the odds are very similar, but the teams aren't. I don't think that the Thunder don't have anywhere near the experience and historical and success over the last few years that the Celtics have had, and the Nuggets have an MVP and the best player in the world over the last 4 years, and the Knicks don't have anyone close to that. So I think those odds are almost insulting, to be honest. I'm taking the Nuggets here. I'm only doing 10 because kind of like the Pacers Cavs, I do think the Thunder will win, and I don't want to lose too much money, but I think the Nuggets have a good shot at the series. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I think that they don't match up. I think that their guards will struggle. The Nuggets will, but I mean, we've seen Jokic take over series when he needs to. We've seen him dominate against some of the best defensive centers in the NBA. And we've seen Aaron Gordon step up when he needs to as well. And I think this could be a big front court game or a big front court series for the Nuggets. I mean, obviously the Thunder have great defense and great scoring across the boards, but just looking at just from an odds perspective, just from a betting perspective, the odds are crazy. So I'm going Nuggets for 10.
All right, what do you think, Cam?
I
see what Cam's thinking. He's going big here.
I got to make my money somewhere, Rich. I like the series. We already talked through some of my thoughts on the matchup between these two teams. I think in this case, you have a situation where both teams really don't have an answer for the opposing superstar. That being said, I'll take the matchup between Christian Brown and Shea over the matchup between Jokic and Chet Holmgren.
Yeah.
I think, this previous series wasn't really set up for Jokic to be the primary scorer with Zubac. This series is set up.
Zubac played really good defense. Jokic said it himself.
Yeah, no, Zubac guards Jokic just about as well one-on-one as any other center in the league. He actually has the weight to be able to resist some of the post play. Really, the Thunder don't have anybody that can really match that. So I think also just being able to not play through a point guard gives the Nuggets, really any team, a big advantage over the Thunder. Just being able to play interior ball, post inside out ball. I think too, like the untested side of it is like, honestly, even though they swept, the Grizzlies played very well against the Thunder.
Oh, yeah.
I think people gave Ja a lot of crap for, saying like they had figured them out and like they would have won 2 games if he hadn't gotten hurt. He's not lying though. I mean, they were up huge in that first. I think that was game 3. They were up like 30 at one point. And then of course, Ja got hurt and the Thunder came roaring back to win that game. But even without Ja in game 4, the Grizzlies played pretty well. They could have pushed that to a 5-game series. And again, that's ironically another team that just fired their head coach and, looked like they were going to have some off-season moves to make. But I just think like Jokic is going to be a little bit too much to handle. And the Nuggets have proven in this Clippers series that they don't actually need Jokic to dominate every game to win. That game 7 was really like Aaron Gordon's game, Christian Brown's game, and Russell Westbrook's game.
Right.
Really, Murray and Jokic didn't have a huge impact on their own.
No.
So I don't know. I'm taking the Nuggets. I'm going to put 40 on them.
All right.
Plus 555.
Yeah. And like Joey said, I compare this to the Knicks where you're getting basically same odds, but I think the Nuggets have a much better chance to win in this series than New York does against the Celts. Unless, say, Drew Holiday maybe doesn't suit up the whole series or something like that. But even then, without him, I still would favor the Celts, just not as much. Yeah. But I definitely think Denver has a shot, so I'm going to take the plus 555 for $10, and I win $55.50. So yeah. All right. So we don't know the odds for the last series because that's either going to be Minnesota versus Houston or versus Golden State. I personally think it will be against Houston. And I think the odds are going to be close on that series. I think they're going to be close to even. I think it's going to be even money. I think if it's Golden State, then Minnesota would have home court. And then I think Minnesota would be a favorite, maybe not a huge favorite. Either way, I think this series will be the closest odds. So, but we don't know what they are. But I think at most, maybe Minnesota would be plus 200. That's what I'm thinking at most, no matter who they play. But I think if they're playing Houston, maybe plus 150, something like that, maybe even less, could be even money. But having said all that, I'll just make my pick. I like the T-Wolves. I've liked them to be in the conference finals pretty much all year, despite them finishing 6th in the West. And so I'm going to put 20, whatever the odds are in this series. Yeah, Joey?
Yeah, I'm not as big on the T-Wolves as you, Rich, but I'm not too big on the Rockets or Warriors either. I think I had the Warriors. I had the Warriors winning the first round series, but think of it as Steph is going to go crazy for a series, and then they're going to lose in 5 in the second round to whoever they play. I didn't even have the Rockets getting out of the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if they won tonight, and they did, but even so, I thought they were too young and inexperienced to win a first round series. Definitely think they're too young and inexperienced to win a second round. So I don't love this T-Wolves team, but they had a really solid first round. Anthony Edwards, my thoughts going into this playoffs were like Anthony Edwards needs to establish himself as like one of the next like guys in the league, and I think he's really on pace to doing that. McDaniels is starting to score at a rate.
Oh
that
man,
they really
he's played fantastic.
He's been. I mean, after they trade Towns, I'm like, they're going to need McDaniels to be more than just a defender. They're going to need him to get some buckets, and he's done that. And yeah, like I mean, the front court won him that series before, and I think it'll be a difficult matchup against the Rockets if they're playing, Adams and Şengün. But I think it just kind of goes to show Chris Finch's. I just think he's a great coach. I think, the ability to put Randall into a system, something that the Knicks haven't been able to do for years and years. His ability to work that, it was a very complicated front court system. Even when they had Towns and Gobert, everyone had their doubts because, I think that was kind of like the first two center lineup in a while. Now more teams are bringing it back, but that was kind of new at the time. And that worked out really well too. So he's just kind of been able to make things work for the Timberwolves team. And it seems to be a really good fit. I think they'll win this series pretty comfortably, regardless of who they get. But I think they'll be favored a good amount. So I'll only do 10. If I knew the odds, maybe I'd put more, but I don't want to risk anything not knowing. So I'll just do a solid 10.
All right, Cam. What are your thoughts on this series?
You guys really hit on everything. I'm just gonna say it with my chest a little bit more and put 30 on the T-Wolves. I like them regardless of who comes out. I think.
Do you agree with me?
Better.
Do you agree with me that they'll be the favorite no matter what?
I think they'll be favored against Golden State. I think they'll also be favored against the Rockets, but not as much. I actually think that would be a more even series. I think for a lot of reasons, just that like the T-Wolves are just kind of like a little bit more matured version of what the Rockets are. It's like they're basically like what the Rockets might look like in like 2 years. That's kind of my thought process. Like Edwards is coming along. Randall's playing out of his mind, like we've said. So I'll take the T-Wolves, put a little bit more money on it, assuming they're favored. But I think that's pretty much a guaranteed matchup for me. Right. Like actually, in hindsight, like Celtics, I would put more money on it. Right? We're not. These aren't real bets for us, but
right.
If the
well,
money
actually,
amount
some of them are. Some of them are.
But if you want to take that Celtics bet, I think that's a pretty surefire series. Like you're just not getting much of a reward out of it. So.
Exactly. All right, so we're not going to have time for the draft today because we had an interview, and but Joey looks like he's got some interesting thoughts in there, but we'll get to that soon in the future. But as always, I want to thank all of our listeners. I want to thank our special guest David Gasson for joining us. If you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back in a week or so. Not necessarily. Let's see. May 9th is actually, we will be back in a week because that's going to be right in the middle of the combine. So we will be back next week to talk more about the NBA playoffs and more about the NBA draft. So any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap this up?
I can't wait for the little tidbit that I've left you guys in the draft for next week, if we can get to it.
Okay. Oh, was that all your handiwork?
Oh yeah.
Ah, interesting. All right. Sorry that we couldn't get to that because it is a fun segment. But
yeah, I was looking through that. I was really excited to do that.
That's an interesting placement.
Wow, I love number 1 on your first list. He would have been a stud. Lenny Bias. All right, folks. Well, we got to wrap it up. We just had a lot to cover on the college draft and NBA playoff side. So, but we'll be back. We got plenty of time to talk. We got a whole summer ahead of us, especially since Cam's going into retirement. Cam's retiring from school teaching at the ripe old age of what, 27?
Yeah. Technically, I'm still 26.
All right.
I might be on this list if it was like a teaching list. I'm like so for the listeners, we got the all-time what could have been team coming to you next week.
Right. Is Bill Walton on there?
Oh, of course he is.
Oh,
And your
great.
boy Ben Simmons is on there.
Oh
too.
my God. He won't be on mine. Oh, you don't have Pete Maravich.
Yeah, I thought about adding
three-point
him.
line?
He still played 10 years.
Yeah, but he was hurt the whole time. And he didn't have the 3-point line from the